Zelda Invades Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1 Link. My name is not Zelda. In the middle of the night, Link yawned. The screen of the Switch in his hand glowed, making Link's eyes twinkle. He was physically tired, but mentally excited. The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, the most fun and perfect game in the world. No matter, I made my own decision. Took a year to complete in his hands. Because he missed this game world, he was reluctant to fight the final boss Ganon. He collected the 4 sacred beasts, Yahaha, and the temples. Finally, when the blood moon came again and again, Princess Zelda's gentle call came, "Link, be careful." This made Link think again and again, there is a girl who has been waiting for him to save. So he embarked on the road to save Princess Zelda and completely ended this game. When the ending music came out, Link felt empty. Link envied the protagonist Link, who had the same name as him. He looked at his phone, and it was already 3 o'clock in the morning. He had to go to work tomorrow, so he went to bed early. Link went to bed exhausted, and suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest and his eyes went black. Link, wake up. Tony Stark, the former playboy, billionaire, philanthropist, scientist, scientific genius, and now a terrorist prisoner, is discussing with Ethan about making armor. It's called a discussion, but in fact it's just Tony Stark giving orders, and Ethan is just helping. The leader of the terrorists just ran over and threatened them, and almost made poor Ethan swallow a burning coal. He also issued an ultimatum, to see the missile completed within 1 day. Tony Stark only has 1 day left to assemble the armor and save himself. Behind them is a pile of ruins, full of iron sheets, springs and other sundries. Over the past few days, Tony Stark has gone from a rich boy to a homeless man, not taking a shower, and smelling of oil and rust. Around the magnet on his chest, pus is also flowing due to hygiene problems. Tony bowed his head for too long, and his neck was a little sore, so he raised his head and twisted it. He sighed. "Ethan, I will take you out in the future and treat you to the most luxurious meal in the world." Ethan was a very gentle person. He thought to himself, in our current situation, whether we can survive tomorrow is a problem. Forget about the big meal. But before he said it, he just smiled and said, "Okay, I'll wait." At this time, there were several noises in the pile of ruins behind them. Tony frowned, turned back and muttered a few words. Could it be snakes? There are not many people in this desert, but there are quite a lot of snakes. Then the noise in the ruins became louder and louder, and some mechanical components on the top fell down. Tony and Ethan were a little nervous. At this time, a hand stretched out from the ruins. Tony shouted, "Ah! The crazy terrorists. They actually threw the body here." Ethan was the first to react, and hurried to check. As he walked, he said, "Something is wrong. This should be a living person." Suddenly, the pile of ruins in the hand moved. The ruins collapsed, and a boy with brilliant blonde hair stumbled out of the ruins. The boy was about 14 or 15 years old, and was dirty, but it could not hide his delicate face and sparkling eyes. At this moment, the boy stood up in a daze. He had no other clothes, except a pair of shorts with a stone slab hanging on it. He was thin, but very strong. The blonde boy covered his forehead, seemed to have a headache, and shouted a few words. He mumbled something in his mouth. Ethan knew many languages, but still couldn't understand. Tony looked strange, listened to the tone of the blonde boy, and asked in confusion, "Why do I feel that he is speaking Chinese?" Ethan hurriedly looked at the camera, and found that the blonde boy happened to be in the blind spot of surveillance. So he breathed a sigh of relief. Tony joked, "Poor child, what are you doing in this pile of ruins? Are you looking for treasure?" Then the blonde boy looked at Tony, and his sparkling eyes made Tony Stark stunned for a moment. This pair of eyes made him think of a word in his mind, brave. This feeling was very strange. When the blonde boy saw Tony, he was stunned and looked terrified. Tony touched his chin depressedly. "I just didn't shave. Why did this boy look at me as if I were a monster?" Then, the blonde boy took out an ancient stone slab from his waist in confusion. The blonde boy took a breath. In the center of the stone slab, there were orange red lines shining, and the core was a blue gem. Tony and Ethan looked at each other, wondering what the blonde boy was going to do. The blonde boy fiddled with it twice, and the stone slab suddenly turned into powder. The blonde boy was shocked and screamed, muttering some incomprehensible language, and then fainted. At this time, there was a sound outside the prison. Someone knocked on the door and shouted, "What are you doing in there?" Ethan hurriedly replied, "Nothing. Everything is fine." The two hurriedly placed the body of the blonde boy in a hidden corner. In any case, if the boy was discovered by this group of terrorists, it would mean death. During the transportation, Ethan and Tony were both shocked. They found that the blonde boy's ears were very pointed and long, just like the noble elves in mythology. Tony muttered a few words. "What strange ears." This boy exuded a kind of weirdness from head to toe. Tony smiled at Ethan and said he couldn't have traveled through time. After joking, he and Ethan continued their bold plan. After all, it was about the life and death of the two. Time is running out. The blonde boy is Linke. He was rushed into the brain by a stream of consciousness flowing from the Shikas lab and fell into a coma. In the deep consciousness of the soul, Zelda's voice sounded again. "Link, I need your help." Linke did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Are you Zelda? You've got the wrong person. I'm not Link. I'm just a player of your game." Zelda's gentle voice continued to sound. "No, you are Link, the hero who saved the continent of Hyrule." Linke had a complicated expression. "No, you're wrong. The continent of Hyrule is just a platform in a game. And I'm just an ordinary office worker. The Link you're looking for is not me. Let me go back to the original world. I have to go to work tomorrow." Zelda said. "Then tell me, who went through countless hardships and liberated the four sacred beasts? Who crossed mountains and rivers to find a memory? Who fought desperately against Ganon to save me from the nightmare of 2000? Linke whispered. "Yes, it's all me." He suddenly realized that Link was the player himself. Zelda said firmly, "That's right, you are Link. Unfortunately, Ganon has revived and was reborn in another world. This world needs you and me to save it, Link." Link recalled that, after he crossed over, he saw a man with a round reactor on his chest emitting blue light. Iron Man. Tony Stark. "You mean, you, me, and Ganon have all come to the Marvel world?" Zelda said. "That's right. Link, you need to awaken your power as soon as possible. I will meet you soon. Take care. Looking forward to seeing you again." Then Zelda's voice disappeared. Link was very distressed. "Marvel world? Why now? Can't you wait a little longer? At least wait until Avengers 4 is released. Let me know the plot of defeating Thanos before crossing over." Link is indeed very strong, but in the Marvel world, there are countless terrible creatures. Link is at most at the level of Captain America. It is very difficult for him to deal with the catastrophe that will happen to the Earth. But after feeling the crisis, Link's heart surged with pride. "I'm Link now. No matter if it is Ganon, Thanos, or any other dangerous enemy, come on. I'm fearless." Gradually, his consciousness disappeared, and Link's soul broke into a ball of light fragments, regrouped, and turned into the form of the brave Link. So after another half a day, Link woke up, rubbed his eyes, and found that he was wearing a piece of clothing, although it was dirty. Then Tony Stark greeted him. "Hey, Zelda, are you finally awake?" Link was in a coma, frowning all the time, mumbling some incomprehensible language. The most repeated word was Zelda. So Tony called this blonde boy Zelda. After Link woke up, he remained silent, sitting aside, watching them work attentively, with a dull expression. Ethan tried to use the local language to communicate with Link, but it didn't work. Tony muttered, "Isn't this a fool?" But Link seemed to understand Tony's words, and glared at Tony in dissatisfaction. In fact, Link was adapting to his new body. From a 24-year-old Asian man, he was transformed into a 14 or 15-year-old, or 114 or 115 years old, blonde boy. Soon, the past combat experience was restored. Bullet time, shield counter, etc. Link clenched his fists. His wrist strength was strong enough to bend steel bars. He had underestimated himself before. With the two great skills of bullet time and shield counter, Link was not afraid of many strong people in the Marvel world. He glanced at Tony. The future Iron Man was desperately assembling armor for his own life. It was also during this period of imprisonment that Tony Stark transformed into a true hero carrying a nuclear bomb to blow up aliens. Their armor was completed and was being installed on Tony. Both of them were very nervous. Time was running out. The terrorist leader came to the monitoring computer and saw only Ethan doing something on the shelf, but Tony Stark was nowhere to be seen. He frowned and asked, "Where is Tony Stark?" The subordinate replied, "He was there just now." The leader said viciously, "Go and see." So several subordinates holding rifles hurried over. Several subordinates knocked on the door and shouted, but Tony Stark didn't answer, so they pushed the door open and pulled the bomb tied behind the door. Bang! The door and the terrorists were blown to pieces. This scared the blonde boy. Tony said, "Go and start the power system." Ethan hurriedly controlled the computer, and the two were in a mess. Then at this time, the blonde boy spoke. Link said in a relatively stiff English, "Please give me a shield." Link doesn't like to talk, and he is playing a joke in the game. Chapter 2, Shield Against Everything. Link said in rather stiff English, "Please give me a shield." Tony said angrily, "Shield? Damn. So you can talk. Look at what's going on now. A child wants a toy, right? But your uncle doesn't have time to make it for you now. Zelda, did you hear me? We may all die soon. So don't disturb me. I'm busy. I'm very busy." Link was a little annoyed. "My name is not Zelda. My name is Link." Tony shouted loudly, "Oh, I don't want to know your name." At this time, Ethan whispered, "There is not enough time." Then he said to Tony seriously, "I will help you buy time." Tony shouted, "Act according to the plan." Ethan ignored Tony's shouting, picked up the gun, and rushed out. Tony shouted to Link, "Boy, help me stop him. He will die." Link nodded and rushed up quickly. He stopped Ethan and said to him, "There are enemies coming, right? Give me a shield and I'll take care of the rest." Ethan sighed, "Kid, this is not the time to show off." He tried to break free from Link's arm, but this boy, who was only 14 or 15 years old, was surprisingly strong. His hands were like steel bars, firmly holding Ethan. Because of Link's delay, the terrorists rushed over quickly. The progress bar on the computer screen was only 70%. Link looked around and found a cover with a handle that could be grabbed. He held it in front of his chest. He frowned and waved it left and right twice. He thought, "This can barely be used. However, if the shield counter fails, I will die." Link looked at the 3 red hearts in the upper left corner of his body and felt helpless. After waking up 100 years later and fighting Ganon, he went through countless hardships. The energy and red hearts he had accumulated with great difficulty disappeared again. The Shika slate was also scrapped for some reason. There was nothing on his body, even in his backpack. All the food he had accumulated that increased his attack and life also disappeared. All the high attribute weapons, armor, shields, including the Master Sword, disappeared. And the skills of the 4 heroes. Miffa. Link covered his chest. All he could rely on was this thin iron shield. But it was enough. Tony sighed helplessly. "Okay, a middle school boy wants to cosplay Captain America with a trash can lid." The terrorists rushed in and saw Link holding his upper body, holding a trash can lid, staring at them with a stern look. They were stunned for a moment, and then they felt a little funny. "Who is this boy holding a trash can lid? Do you want to stop them?" So 4 or 5 people shot at the same time. Link was a little flustered, and he took a trash can lid himself. Facing the concentrated fire of 4 or 5 people with hot weapons, he couldn't help but feel a little afraid. But the fear in his heart was soon overwhelmed by courage. He hurriedly pushed Ethan aside. Then he saw the dense bullets shooting at Link. Ethan yelled, "Kid." Tony cursed in a low voice, "Damn it. Hurry up. Hurry up. Why is it so slow to start up? Crappy computer." Link focused his attention, and time suddenly slowed down. A dozen bullets appeared clearly in his field of vision, moving very slowly, as if they were standing still. Link held his breath and focused, and swung back with the lid. Shield counter. Ethan was so surprised that his mouth opened wide. He saw a very amazing scene. A dozen bullets deflected 180 degrees and shot back at several terrorists. Boom. 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 Several terrorists were shot in the body, and before they could react, they all fell to the ground and died. Link looked at the lid of the trash can, which was intact. The thousands of shield counters in the past came to his mind, and at this moment, he finally admitted that he was Link. "My god," Ethan exclaimed. Looking at Link, his eyes were full of disbelief. Tony shouted, "What happened?" From his angle, he didn't see the miracle just now. Ethan stammered as he explained, "Link." He shot the bullet back. At this time, the mecha inspection was completed. Tony, wearing a bulky and ugly mechanical armor, turned around. He saw Ethan lying on the ground, looking at Link with, or as if he were a god. In front of Link, several terrorists fell to the ground, shot dead. Link was only holding a funny trash can lid, a thin layer of iron sheet. Tony screamed, "This is unscientific. How did you do it?" Link made a backhand shield swinging motion. "Shield counter." Tony. He didn't see Link's shield counter with his own eyes. Tony would rather believe that it was these terrorists who shot themselves out of their minds. At least this barely conforms to science. Tony said, "Let's go." The three hurried out. Link was holding the shield and walking in front. Soon they met the enemy. They were stunned when they saw Tony's terrible and ugly mecha. They opened fire immediately. Flames spurted from the muzzle of the gun, and bullets were fired at the three people furiously. This time, Link was more familiar with this kind of attack, similar to that of the Guardian. He was calm, aimed at the bullet, and swung his shield back. Time suddenly stopped, and the air was filled with the sound of rustling wind, which was the sound of rifle shooting stretched countless times. Although there was no armor, no weapons, no master sword, and no skills of the four heroes, but this martial arts and the courage in his heart have never changed. The bullets were all bounced back by Link. This kind of attack with a 100% shield counter success, these ordinary people couldn't dodge it at all, and they were all hit. No matter how many bullets he fired, they were all returned. Tony witnessed it with his own eyes this time, and he slumped in the mecha. This doesn't conform to the laws of physics. What's wrong with this boy? He laughed dryly and said to Ethan, "It seems that this armor we made with great effort is useless. It can only scare children on Halloween." Then he asked Link, "Kid, are you an alien?" Link turned around and said seriously, "My name is Link, from Hyrule. I will take you away first, and then I want you to help me with something. Ganon's appearance will cause countless changes in the Marvel world." The disasters in the movie appeared in Link's mind. Link had a hunch that Ganon would be more powerful in this world. He wanted to meet up with Zelda as soon as possible. And these words made Tony and Ethan very confused. They were all well-informed people who knew multiple languages, and they had never heard of a country called Hyrule on Earth. Could it be a primitive tribe on a small island in the Pacific Ocean? Link was about to rush out of the cave, but Ethan, who knew the layout of the defense outside, suddenly rushed over and stopped Link. "Don't go. There are machine guns outside." Tony also stood up and looked at Link with a squint. "Boy, have you been in the limelight enough? It's time for the protagonist to appear. He is more intelligent than ordinary people." After seeing him once, he had a preliminary understanding of Link's skills. To launch what Link calls shield counter, you need to concentrate and hold your breath to achieve the effect of a critical hit. And the machine guns outside are firing continuously. Link had just bounced back the first wave of attacks when the second wave of bullets came again, continuously. This kid is indeed strange, but he can't launch a shield counter several times in a second. The trash can lid is a thin layer of skin and can't stop bullets at all. If Link rushes out, he will be in great danger. Now is the time to do it yourself. Welcome to Vote and Collector Support. Please read and watch genuine novels at Kidian. Chapter 3, Escape. Tony drove the mecha out of the cave, and the enemies outside caused a commotion. The sunlight shone on the armor, and Tony squinted his eyes. He had been imprisoned in a dimly lit prison for several days, and the sunlight outside was too dazzling for him. The sunlight also ignited Tony's anger that had accumulated over the past few days. Tony shouted, "Look who you have offended." The flamethrower spewed out flames, burning a group of people, and rolling on the ground screaming. Tony said to Link and Ethan, "Don't come out before I deal with the enemies outside." The thrusters under his feet started, and Tony jumped up, knocked down an enemy with one arm, and fell into a melee. Although he looked majestic, in Link's eyes, he was particularly clumsy, inefficient, and lacked long-range attack weapons. Immediately afterwards, Tony was aimed at by a machine gun in the distance, and a series of bullets made him unable to stand up. There were ammunition and explosives all around, and he exploded into a ball with flames everywhere. The air wave directly blew down Ethan and Link. Link said to Ethan, "Do you have a bow and arrow?" Ethan said, "No one uses this kind of primitive weapon now." "Hawky, huh?" Link said, "Any long-range weapon will do." So Ethan gave Link his rifle. Link looked embarrassed. Ethan thought Link didn't know how to use a gun, so he had to teach Link how to shoot. "Here, pull the trigger and the bullet will shoot out. Wait." Link pulled the trigger curiously, and with a pop, the bullet almost hit Ethan. Ethan was so scared that his voice trembled. "It seems that you have learned how to use a gun." Link hurriedly apologized, but outside the cave, Tony was in a very dangerous moment with explosions all around him. Link took the gun and rushed to the edge of the cave. Looking around, he saw the muzzle of the gun pointing at the enemy who was firing a machine gun. Tony saw Link running out, and the guy's posture of holding the gun was particularly awkward, holding the gun with one hand, looking stupid. Tony shouted hurriedly, "It's too dangerous. You will be shocked by the airwave and bleed. Go back quickly." He could have used the Iron Man's thrusters to eject himself from the battlefield to escape, but this would be equivalent to abandoning Link and Ethan. Tony appears to be cynical, but he has a strong sense of responsibility and is very proud. He would rather die here than abandon Link and Ethan who saved him. Tony saw that Link actually wanted to shoot the shooter with the machine gun, and shouted, "Don't be stupid, you can't hit him at such a distance." Link held his breath and aimed, and responded, "I can. I'm the best shooter in Hyrule." Tony mocked, "Oh, that's amazing. The best shooter in the primitive tribe. Go back quickly, give me a little time, and I can." Link fired a shot, but his accuracy was very poor. Tony snorted, and Link frowned, thinking, it seems that being good at archery does not necessarily mean being good at shooting. After checking the distance, he swung the rifle and threw it out, spinning it in the air. With a whirring sound, it hit the machine gunner from a distance, knocking him to the ground head first. Tony exclaimed in disbelief, "What's going on? Is he an Olympic champion? How can he throw so far and still be so accurate? Who is this little monster?" Tony frowned and muttered, rushing out and punching the enemy away. Rushing back to the cave, Link and Ethan each held one in their hands. Tony shouted, "The ammunition depot outside is about to explode. Let's get out quickly." Tony started the thrusters and looked at the gunpowder boxes outside, cursing, "These idiots. They actually put the ammunition in the desert under the sun. Haven't they learned the hazardous materials control regulations?" At this time, the thrusters under his feet failed to start twice. Tony and Ethan looked at each other. "No, the mecha can't fly with 3 people on it at the same time." Ethan shook his head. "I'm heavier, you take the child away." Tony said anxiously, "Don't be like this, you still have family. I will take you away safely." Ethan smiled, "I lied to you, I have no family." Tony was stunned. Seeing that the tragedy in the original time and space was about to happen, Ethan still couldn't escape death. Link jumped down. He looked at the 3 red hearts in the upper left corner. After estimating the damage, he felt confident. He said to Tony, "You take Ethan away first." Tony covered his head and murmured, "What happened today? I always meet such good people who are willing to die for others." Link said seriously, "You go, I can handle it. You have seen my shield counter skill just now. I will be fine, and I will come to you soon." In the original time and space, it was Ethan's death that turned Tony from an arms dealer into a peace fighter defending the Earth. At this moment, Link's eyes sparkled, which made Tony sigh with emotion. When he first saw Link's eyes, the word brave appeared in his mind, and now this impression was even stronger. The brave and fearless look of this young man blossomed in Tony's heart little by little. Tony took a deep breath. "Boy, I know you have special abilities. You must survive." Then he picked up Ethan and flew into the sky. Link ran out and looked at the trajectory of Tony's flight. With his arms across, he blocked the lid of the trash can in front of his chest and focused on the ammunition boxes. When he was wandering in the Hyrule continent, he had not yet learned the skills of the bird beast, so he used a shield to develop a weird flying method. The explosives detonated, and then he stepped on the shield and flew into the sky with a shockwave. an operating trick in the game, but I failed several times. If Tony knew that Link's way, to ensure nothing will happen, was actually such a weird way, he would never leave Link alone here. Boom. Sparks flew everywhere, and a shockwave rushed over at high speed, blowing Link's blonde hair straight. He suddenly jumped up and stepped on the lid of the trash can in the air. The shockwave came, and Link used the force to fly into the sky. The shield under his feet exploded into pieces. Link's knees were hit, and one of his knees was damaged. But without any armor, he was already at his limit to be able to do this. Link laughed happily in the sky, and the terrorists coming from a distance thought it was some kind of bird. This kind of dangerous action is what Link likes to do the most. He especially enjoys this kind of thrilling feeling between life and death. Link adjusted to the position of being hit, and his body, with the impact force, flew to the place where Tony and the others flew. After enjoying the pleasure of flying at high speed for 2 seconds, Link planned to open the paraglider and slowly go to find Tony and the others. Suddenly, Link's face showed a rare look of fear. This is a rare thing for the legendary hero who saved the Hyrule continent. This is because Link. He forgot that his paraglider was gone. Link didn't know how to land. Thanks for watching. If you like it, add it to your favorites and vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 4 Hard Landing. In order to avoid some sensitive issues, the first 3 chapters have been modified. Instead of Link himself traveling through time, it has become the player traveling through time. Anyway, in the original work, there is a tendency of Link as the player, and the character setting will still use Link as a template. For example, can eat anything, good at climbing, throwing cans, etc. Link screamed in the air, looking at the enemy camp under his feet in horror, becoming a small piece. He was at a very high place, and the wind was howling, blowing it left and right. Link looked at his only 2 red hearts left. From this height, he would definitely not survive if he fell hard. Seeing his body begin to fall, Link felt desperate. In the game, he can be reborn, and he can also use Mythos skills, or the elves, to revive instantly. But now, whether it is the elves or Mytha, Link has none of them. This is not a game. There will be no resurrection after death. In the desert ahead, a pile of Iron Man fragments was seen. Tony and Ethan were lying on the sand and groaning. They must have fallen badly. Link was suddenly stunned. He noticed that the place where he was about to land was the slope of a sand dune. So with hope in his heart, Link clenched his fists. Even if there were only 2 red hearts left, Link's physique was much stronger than that of ordinary people, enough to cope with some impacts that ordinary people could not withstand. Tony lay on the desert panting and said, "The stability of this armor is not good. I will strengthen it later." Ethan was also bruised all over. He was burned by the sand. Suddenly he stared at the sky blankly. At least we have armor protection. So what about Link without armor? Tony's scalp was also burned by the hot sand. He sat up suddenly and asked, "What are you talking about?" Then he looked in the direction of Ethan's gaze, and his eyes became dull. "Link, is this boy blown away?" Link fell quickly on the sand dune, smashing a large piece of sand and dust, and then rolled over along the slope like a wheel. Tony shouted, "Link!" and Ethan rushed forward. The two saw where Link was falling, stood in a row, and tried to catch him with their hands. If Link fell from such a high place, he would bleed, even if he fell on the water, not to mention on the sand dunes. Link curled himself up as much as possible and hit the sand, and immediately spat out blood. The 2 red hearts were now only half a square. Link was overjoyed. At least he was not dead. Then he rolled down quickly, filling Link's mouth with sand, and the world was spinning, and he could not control his body at all. When he saw that the last half of his blood was about to be worn out, Link fell into the arms of 2 flesh. Link was like a small cannonball, crashing towards Tony and Ethan. The 2 groaned, and were knocked away together, and the 3 rolled into a ball. Link. Tony climbed up with a dusty face, and hurried to check whether Link was alive or dead. He saw that Link's face was as white as paper, and his originally bright golden hair was now mixed with a lot of sand and dust, and it looked dull. His breathing and heartbeat became weaker and weaker. No matter how Tony called him, Link was like a stone statue, indifferent, with his eyes tightly closed. Tony shouted, "Link, Link, cheer up. I'll take you to the most expensive and best doctor in the world. You'll be fine." Then he shook Link's body desperately. Tony regretted leaving such a young boy in the enemy camp that was about to explode, and felt very guilty. At this time, Ethan hurriedly crawled over and said, "Stop shaking. He's not dead." Tony was stunned to see Link slowly opening his eyes and staring at him angrily. "I have many broken bones. I need to rest." Then Link fell into a coma again. Thanks to his strong body, he survived such a high altitude fall, but it also made Link's vital signs weak. He had to reduce his activities as much as possible like a hibernating turtle to protect his last breath. Tony's shaking just now almost shook Link to death. Ethan came forward, checked Link's body, and said, "He is too badly injured," and fell into a self-protective sleep. "Let's not disturb him." Tony was surprised and happy. "That's good." He picked up Link and carried him on his back, but his feet slipped, and he almost fell. Tony muttered, "This boy looks light, but I didn't expect him to be so heavy." The two of them hurriedly walked in the desert with Link. Ethan was also seriously injured, and he had to take a breath. After walking a few steps, Tony looked at the sun glaring and burning his flesh, and pulled a piece of cloth to cover Link's head. Now this blonde boy was sleeping, although his face was dirty, but he had a handsome face. At this moment, he was unconscious, and his straight eyebrows softened, making Link look like a little girl. Tony thought to himself, if the parents of this child knew that their child was in such danger, how sad they would be. Tony's mouth was bubbling, and his mouth was dry. Ethan panted, "Don't worry about me. It's too hot here. Link can't hold on for too long. You take him first, and I'll follow slowly from behind." Tony looked at Link on his back, and then at the seriously injured Ethan. He was in a critical situation. He blamed himself. "I should have checked whether the armor could be repaired. There should be some fuel in the thrusters." Just when the three were about to be roasted to death by the scorching sun in the desert, there was a whoosh noise in the sky. Ethan shouted, "No! They are chasing us in a helicopter." Ethan thought it was an enemy, but Tony was overjoyed. He put Link down exhausted, and said to Ethan, "Those terrorists hiding in the desert don't have this type of helicopter. I know the vibration sound of this helicopter very well." Then two military helicopters flew over their heads, blowing the sand wildly. Tony raised one hand, and put up two fingers of victory. The plane landed, and Tony Stark's friend, Rhodey, ran down. Tony looked at him in shock, looking haggard. The bright and beautiful playboy looked like a homeless man. Tony shouted, "Roddy, take this kid to get treated." They boarded the helicopter in a hurry. Link was unconscious, and he didn't notice that the 3 red hearts on his upper left corner suddenly popped out, turning into 4 red hearts. In the plane, Roddy smiled and waved his hands. "Tony, you are talking nonsense again. How could this boy survive after falling from a height of 200 meters? Tony drank the water in the military water bottle and frowned. "I don't believe it either, but it happened in front of my eyes. By the way, give me a glass of brandy." Roddy said, "This service is not provided in military aircraft. The boy's injuries are quite scary. His cervical vertebrae, ribs, spine, and joints are all injured, and they are not light, and there are a lot of minor injuries. I'm afraid that after waking up, he will lose the ability to take care of himself." Tony's face sank. "It's okay. I will compensate him. He can't walk. I will give him a humanoid armor that can run and fly. This is what he deserves." He recalled that Link only used a trash can lid to bounce back all the enemy's bullets, and the lid was not damaged at all. How would such a magical boy feel when he woke up and found that he couldn't even walk? Tony's excessive sense of responsibility began to torture him again. Chapter 5 High Difficulty Operation. When Link was unconscious, Tony took him from the heart of Eurasia to North America. When the plane landed, Tony's assistant Pepper was quietly waiting, followed by Tony's security guard Happy. Tony never returned, and the company was in chaos. Thanks to Pepper's timely stabilization of the situation, the stock price did not plummet. When Tony returned home, He found that his net worth was 200 billion less. Open the rear hatch. Pepper was very curious about what Tony would become after 3 months of disappearance. Maybe being tortured would be a good thing, which would make Tony more calm. As a result, she was dumbfounded to see Tony, a middle-aged man wearing round glasses, and his good friend Roddy, hurriedly pushing a stretcher down. Tony saw Pepper and shouted, "Hurry up and take this child to the hospital." Pepper quickly agreed, "Oh, okay," while thinking, "Child? Tony's a legitimate child?" The medical car rushed over. Although Tony had a bandage on his right arm and walked with a limp, he still took care of the teenager on the stretcher throughout the whole process. Then he said to the medical staff with a respectful look, "Take good care of him." Then he came to Pepper and introduced himself to Ethan. "This is my savior." After Pepper thanked Ethan, she watched the door of the medical car close, wondering who the blonde boy who was so cared for by Tony was, and asked, "Then who is he?" Tony replied, "My other savior, a magical boy. I think he knows Chinese kung fu." After Link crossed over, he spoke a paragraph of Chinese in a daze, which was recorded by Tony. Several people got on the car, and Happy asked where to go. Tony said, "Hospital." Pepper was very strange. She knew that Tony hated hospitals and those doctors who asked him about his private information. Logically speaking, Tony would rather have a grand party than go to the hospital. After getting off the plane, Pepper was ready to argue with Tony, but Tony said firmly, "Go to the hospital." Could it be that 3 months of prisoner status finally made Tony transform? As a result, Tony said, "No, I'm going to the hospital, not to treat the disease, but to see the child. And Ethan also needs further treatment." Tony's habit of hating hospitals has never changed. He is unwilling to trust others easily. He hates the feeling of his life being in the hands of others. In the original Marvel Time and Space, in Iron Man 1, he could have gone to the hospital to do a more appropriate reactor replacement, but he didn't want to, and would rather take the risk and let Pepper come. In Iron Man 2, Tony was poisoned by palladium, and would rather wait for death in despair than go to the hospital, even though going to the hospital was useless. In Iron Man 3, he finally let go of his knot and awkwardly performed the operation to remove the reactor and the shrapnel under it. This shrapnel has been in his body for 5 years. Tony said to Pepper, "I just want a cheeseburger now. Oh, and one for Ethan. I promised to treat him to a meal." Ethan was beside him and thanked him. Then he complained in his heart, "Didn't you say that we were going to have the most luxurious meal in the world? How did it change to cheeseburgers?" Tony ordered again, "Prepare a press conference for me." Pepper, "Where?" Tony, "In this hospital." Then Tony got out of the car while chewing a burger and hurried to Link's ward. He stood in front of the door and looked at Ethan in silence, not daring to go in. At this moment, the doctor came out and was shocked. "Mr. Stark?" Tony asked, "Is Link awake?" The doctor said, "Awake." Tony hesitated. Then, "Does he have any emotional fluctuations?" During the initial diagnosis and treatment on the plane, Rhoda regretfully told Tony that Link might never be able to stand up again and could not take care of himself. This made Tony fall into deep self-blame. If the power of the thrusters was increased, maybe he could take the 3 away. Although Tony was wary of outsiders and spoke harshly, once he identified a friend, he would become another person, a generous and nice man. In Iron Man 2, when he was sick and desperate, he gave the company to Pepper Potts and the War Machine armor to Rhoda. Of course, he only gave one set. After all, the Iron Man suit was Tony's favorite, and he would take it with him even if he died. After the Civil War, he almost maintained the Avengers by himself. Even though he was the only one left in the Avengers, Rhoda was disabled, Vision was naughty, Spider-Man stood him up. Tony was very bitter, but Tony didn't say it. Even so, he was desperately developing weapons exclusively for Thor and others, hoping to help them one day. And now, Ethan and Link are considered friends by Tony. Tony's sense of responsibility always oppresses him. He believes that Link has become like this because he didn't do well enough. The doctor answered truthfully, "The patient is in a stable mood." Tony shook his head in frustration. "Link is probably too shocked and hasn't recovered yet. Poor kid." The doctor followed suit and agreed, "This kid is really pitiful. There's nothing wrong with his body, but he was wrapped in plaster by those quacks in the army. How unlucky." Tony shouted, "He's fine." The doctor was shocked and cursed in his heart, a playboy with a weird temper. He said, "That's right. There's no injury at all." Among his peers, I haven't seen anyone with a better physique than Link. Is this kid an athlete? His physical fitness is scary, with a body fat rate of less than 7% and a body full of muscles. Oh, damn, I remembered my annoying son who eats snacks all day and gets fat like a pig. Tony ignored the doctor's chattering. He rushed into the single ward. Link looked depressed at himself in a plaster cast, as if he was wearing 2 layers of down jackets, very clumsy and ridiculous. Link looked at Tony and said in stiff English, "Hello." Tony was speechless. "Are you healed?" Link nodded. His physical fitness was amazing, and he was also surprised. Just now, he received the information in his brain. Complete a difficult operation. Get a heart container. Get an energy container. Then Link found that his life value, the red heart in the upper left corner, has 1 more, becoming 4 hearts. The energy tank has also increased by 25%. This made Link overjoyed. Even if there were only 3 hearts, that's what the game calls it. It feels so cute. He could jump from a high altitude and survive. It can be seen how terrible his physical fitness is. Now that it has become 4 hearts, his vitality has increased by 1/4. As for the energy value, it has become the power that Link has in the Marvel world. Link estimated that his wrist strength is twice the limit of ordinary people. If the energy value is increased to a certain level, he might be able to arm wrestle with Thor and the Hulk. The plaster on his body trapped Link's movement. Link wanted to test his own strength, so he exerted all his strength. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Link broke all the plaster on his body. I need to explain the doubts of all book friends. The protagonist is the Link in the game. The time traveler is a way for Link to know the Marvel plot. Why did I add such an awkward setting? Because after all, it is a fan fiction. At least we should respect the original creator. It is a bit unreasonable to directly use Nintendo's beloved hero as a protagonist. No matter how hypocritical it is, we have to avoid it. For the same reason, I don't allow myself to vilify the main characters in Zelda and Marvel. In the first chapter, it was Link himself who traveled through time. This should be reserved in the pirated chapters of this book. Thank you Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Time is no longer there for 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Bookfriend 201710071052352044 recommendation vote. Thank you Bookfriend Luova for 8 recommendation votes. Chapter 6 Breaking News. Link stood up, ignoring Tony and the others who were dropping their jaws, and stood barefoot on the ground, moving his limbs. He looked at the prompts in his mind, and smiled bitterly in his heart. High difficulty operation? Please, even if I have the opportunity to increase my health, I will not do such a stupid thing for the second time. The increase in health and energy bar brought Link good news. It means that his strength can be increased, and he will have the opportunity to obtain the 4 sacred beast skills of rebirth, levitation, blocking, and electric shock in the future, including the manipulation of metal, time stop, suspended ice, and bombs in chicane. Tony walked in and looked Link up and down. I thought you would be unconscious for longer. Link nodded, and his stomach made a gurgling sound. He looked at the half-eaten burger in Tony's hand, and his eyes were full of reproach. Why didn't I have a share? Ethan said, well, if you want, I can give you my burger, which has not been touched. Ethan handed the burger, which had not been unpacked at all, to Link. Link thanked him, and chewed his food in big mouthfuls. He looked very delicious. He finished the battle in 2 or 3 bites, and finished a whole burger. The onlookers were shocked again. At this moment, Link was clean, thin and fair, with delicate features, bright blonde hair hanging on his shoulders, and delicate skin that was rare among white people. Tony felt that, even if Link wore women's clothes, it would not be out of place. He was really a very beautiful boy. But such a boy who seemed a little weak could survive a fall from a height of 200 or 300 meters, and bounce back bullets from hot weapons with a thin metal trash can lid. Tony was very curious about the difference between his body structure and that of ordinary people. There was a noise outside the window, and Tony walked over to see that reporters had gathered in front of the hospital, holding cameras and microphones, like a group of excited jackals. Tony muttered, "These people are really dedicated." At this time, a bald and strong man walked in from the door and said, "Tony, I'm glad you're okay." Link's eyes condensed. Tony turned around and said, "Oh, Abade," and hugged the villain from the first Iron Man movie. Link looked at Abade and felt that this guy's acting was really good. He failed to frame Tony, but he could still chat and laugh with Tony calmly without revealing any flaws. It seems that he is really mentally resolute. Tony is unlucky to be remembered by such a guy. Abade said enthusiastically, "It's good to see that you are okay. The reporters are waiting downstairs. Let's go." Then, he noticed a group of eyes that were staring at him. It was the blonde boy sitting on the hospital bed. The way he looked at him was as if he was examining a criminal, which made Abade very uncomfortable. Tony shook his head. "Don't worry. These reporters would rather wait a little longer. After all, there will be a heavy global headline waiting for these jackals later." Tony knew very well how much shock he was about to cause around the world. Tony said to Link in a gentle voice, "How are you doing now? What do you need?" Link said, "A piece of clothing." Tony, who is a chatterbox who can chat non-stop with robots, is different. Link speaks briefly and doesn't like to speak. Tony asked someone to get clothes. Then he frowned at Link. "Your English accent is really strange. You take a rest first. I will come to see you after the press conference." Tony has always been frivolous, and it is rare for him to treat Link with such a gentle attitude. Abade and Tony have been together for so many years, and he found something wrong at first glance, and had the same guess as Pepper. This child is about the right age. Is he Tony's illegitimate child? Tony has been affectionate everywhere, so it is not surprising that an illegitimate child suddenly appeared. But Abade's face was a little gloomy. If that is the case, not only Tony Stark, but also this blonde boy need to be eliminated. Otherwise the blonde boy will inherit Tony's property. Abade does not want to work for Tony's family for 3 generations. Abade asked, "Tony, who is this?" Tony shrugged. "Link, my very reliable friend. Let's go." At this time, clothes were brought, and Link quickly put them on, saying, "I'll go with you." Ethan said, "Your body." Link put on his shoes and looked up. It's completely healed. This little injury is nothing. Link didn't want to miss this plot. A few minutes later, Tony lit up the whole audience. He announced that Stark Company would no longer continue to produce weapons. Link looked at Tony fearlessly on the stage, and Abade was very embarrassed and didn't know what to do. The reporters' reactions were surprisingly consistent. Their dear Mr. Tony Stark had provided them with another explosive news. Link knew that the reporters must think that this was a willful statement made by Tony Stark, the rich second generation who was rich enough to rival a country. In a few days, they would pretend that they hadn't said it and continue to sell arms. What a joke. Arms business. Huge profits. This kind of market, others can't get in, even if they want to. And Tony said he gave up right away. Who would believe it? But Tony ignored Abade's attempt to smooth things over and insisted on the facts he announced. Everyone realized that this was true, and the scene became chaotic. Tony looked around at the shocked eyes of the crowd. Everyone thought he was crazy, but Tony himself knew very well what he was doing, and he was not shaken at all. He scanned everyone one by one, and finally saw Link. Link was wearing a casual suit, and was very handsome. His blonde hair was too long, so he tied it into a ponytail, which made him look more energetic. In the whole audience, only Link remained calm and unmoved. Link noticed Tony's gaze, and nodded at him. Tony smiled. What is this kid thinking about now? Not only Tony noticed Link, but Coulson, the SHIELD agent next to Pepper, also looked at Link deeply. This boy, who came back with Tony, is very strange. It is necessary to investigate. After the press conference, Tony invited Link to live in his home, which made Pepper very strange. She really asked Tony, "Is this child your illegitimate child?" Tony was stunned. "What are you thinking about? I'm just curious about this child." Link was also embarrassed next to him. He blinked and thought of Spider-Man in the future. Tony likes to take care of the younger generation. Of course, Ethan was also invited to Tony's house. He and Tony made armor together, and Tony needed his experience. But Ethan refused, and he smiled and shook his head. So Tony carried forward his generous attributes of the Stark family and gave Ethan a large sum of money and a villa. According to his wish, Ethan lived the peaceful life he wanted. So the man who influenced Tony Stark's life left. Thanks to the book friend Choose Ioyang Wang for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend for 9 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Hegemon for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friends Fet Heaven Yeo for 6 recommendation votes. Chapter 7 Old Things. Outside, because Tony Stark announced that Stark Company would transform from an arms dealer, and when things were going turbulent, the news media, business competitors, peace lovers, governments, and the all-knowing crowd were all discussing this matter enthusiastically. Tony, a playboy who was already popular, is now more well known than ever before. People outside are speculating whether Tony Stark has found the mine at home. But even a diamond mine cannot make as much money as selling arms. The king of Wakanda, who is far away in Africa, was also shocked when he heard the news. Did Stark also find a vibranium mine? People all over the world don't understand Tony Stark's shocking move, and a bad day is contacting the board of directors, trying to take this opportunity to fight for power. But Tony turned a deaf ear to it, as if he didn't know, and stayed at home, chatting happily with Link. Link is quiet and Tony is talkative, so Tony is the one who talks while Link listens. At the end, Tony says, "Link, it's nice to chat with you." Link frowned. "What the hell? You are the one who keeps talking. I didn't say anything." Tony said, "I have asked Pepper Potts to find Zelda, the blonde girl with thick eyebrows and the same age as you. I guess there will be clues soon." Link said, "Thank you." At this time, Tony's smart AI butler Jarvis said, "Sir, I have made the shield and sword." Link said to Jarvis, "Thank you too." Jarvis ordered the stupid mechanical arm robot dummy, the guy who stupidly sprayed Tony with a fire extinguisher. There seems to be no unified translation name, to bring a shield and a sword. The sword and shield were drawn by Link, based on the shapes of the Exorcist sword and Hylia shield in the game, and he asked Tony to help him make them. Link held the fake Exorcist sword and the fake Hylia shield in his hands, and immediately felt a sense of fulfillment in his heart. As expected, a brave man must have a sword and a shield. Tony said, "This is a special alloy with high strength, high temperature resistance, low temperature resistance, and not easy to be damaged. It's just a little heavy. This sword and shield, together, need 50 kilograms. But Link took it easily in his hand and said, "No, it's very light, or rather, a little light." The master sword in his memory, the Exorcist sword, is much heavier than this replica, but Link still swings it freely. Tony was dumbfounded. Terrible physical strength. Wait until tomorrow, we will go together to buy the bow and arrow you want. There is a specialty store nearby. Then, now I want to see your rebound again. Link corrected, "It's a shield counter." Tony said, "Whatever. What should we do?" Link glanced at Damie, "Let him swing it at me, or shoot me with bullets." Tony naturally couldn't shoot Link with a gun. It would be terrible if someone died, so he asked Damie to hold the Exorcist sword and prepare to chop Link. Link held the shield and said to Damie, "Start attacking me." Damie turned to look at Tony stupidly. Tony nodded, then suddenly swung his sword and chopped down vertically. Link saw the right moment and swung his shield suddenly. Bang! Damie was directly hit stiff. With a click, Damie's mechanical arm broke. Tony sat up on the sofa in shock, looking at poor Damie. Although Damie was stupid, his body was extremely strong. It was made of the same material as the Exorcist sword, and it would not be broken even by missile bombardment. In Iron Man 3, Tony's house was bombed and everything was destroyed, but this mechanical arm robot Damie survived, which shows how strong it is. Jarvis's inspection report soon came to his ears. According to analysis, Mr. Link bounced back all of Damie's slashing force, and he himself was not hit at all. And a lot of reports with complicated terms. Tony shook his head. Science can't explain this kind of thing. Watching Link rush to check on Damie and apologize to Damie, he thought to himself, Hyrule, maybe it's the name of a planet. Tony still knew a little about other life forms in the universe. Tony told Damie, "Go get yourself a new arm." So Damie walked back to the workshop pitifully. At this time, Tony's newly developed miniature arc reactor was also successfully made. Lying down on the work chair, Pepper came down to help him install it. It's not that he didn't trust Link, but Link was very strong. If he didn't use enough force and accidentally pulled out something that shouldn't be pulled out, it would be terrible. Such a strong man must be careful. Pepper walked down in confusion and nodded to Link. Tony told Pepper what he needed her help with, and Pepper was very hesitant. He took off the old reactor, then looked at the hole in Tony's chest, at a loss, and with a disgusting look on his face, he reached his hand into Tony's chest full of electrolyte or pus, and pulled out a wire. Tony just said, "There's a magnet underneath. Don't." "Okay." "You pulled it out." Pepper tried to put it back, but Tony hurriedly stopped her. He felt his heart was about to stop beating. "Hurry up and help me put the reactor in." Link watched from the side and felt a pain in his chest, and it was really ugly. He looked at Tony's chest, then rubbed his eyes. It was really disgusting. Pepper hesitated with the reactor, and Tony's condition was getting worse and worse. Pepper looked at Link and handed the reactor to Link. "Leave it to you." Tony shouted, "Don't let him do it," but Link took the reactor with peace of mind. Pepper was too slow, and he felt uncomfortable watching the whole process. He made a prompt decision, took the connecting part in his hand, stuffed it into Tony's chest, connected it with a click, and then put the reactor into Tony's chest. The whole process took no more than 2 seconds. Link blew the mucus on his fingers and said, "Alright." Tony was scared to death. Panting, he said to Link, "Thanks." Pepper admired Link's courage and said to Tony, "Don't let me do this kind of thing again." Then he said a few words to comfort Link. "You'll find a girlfriend soon, believe us." After that, Pepper left. Tony sat up, new energy. "I can start my plan." "Link, you've seen the mecha I made before, but it's not perfect, ugly, and clumsy. I want to make a better one, codenamed MK2. A brand new subversive technological product is enough to bring peace to the world. The previous bulky weapons are about to end their mission. By the way, Damie, help me throw away this antique, old arc reactor." But Damie was still replacing the mechanical arm. Link took the old arc reactor in his hand and said to Tony, "Give it to me." "Okay." With him protecting him, Tony was safe, but he was still prepared to stay just in case. Tony didn't care. "If you want it, just take it. Technology loves the new and hates the old, and so do I." He didn't know that in another time and space, he was saved by this abandoned old thing. Thanks to the book friend Puginin for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Ishanch for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Han Hyan Fafa for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Ashua Iglo who doesn't take the blame for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Chuxio Yangwan for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Guzalien Pride for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Hegemon for 1 recommendation vote. Chapter 8 Black Widow and Hawkeye. Tony began to make the Iron Man suit MK2. In the original time and space, Link especially liked to watch this plot. But only by watching it in reality can you feel the difficulty and complexity of making the Iron Man suit. Tony burst out his superhuman hands-on ability and imagination, completing more than a dozen iterations of the initial concept in a day, with an astonishingly terrifying speed. Among his 3 assistants, Link, Jarvis, and Damie, only Jarvis can be of some use. Damie is responsible for making trouble, and Link is responsible for protecting Tony and carrying heavy objects. Link is super good at lifting things. Tony completed the Iron Man suit alone. Watching the fantasy things, little by little, landed and became a reality. Link witnessed the whole process and was happy. After a few days, Tony, who was notoriously withdrawn, actually got along very well with Link, thinking that he was good at chatting, good at listening to others, but Tony never ate with Link. Link is a big eater. His appetite is so amazing that even scared Damie. To be honest, Damie would be scared when he saw Link after being beaten by Link. Because Link seemed to be very happy while eating, Tony also had a big appetite and actually began to gain weight. American style food tends to be high in calories and sugar, and Tony is a middle-aged man after all, with excess nutrition. So in order to avoid becoming a big fat man, Tony decided not to eat with Link to avoid being affected by him. Although Link didn't help Tony much, he saved Tony from a lot of injuries, and Tony was very grateful to Link. Moreover, there was no news about Zelda so far. With the ability of Star Company, they couldn't find this little girl. Tony had promised Link, so he felt a little guilty for not being able to help Link. So in order to compensate, he actually broke free from his obsession with mecha making and took Link in a luxury car to a nearby archery store to buy equipment. As a result, he met an acquaintance. Tony walked into the bow and arrow store. There was a large space inside, with countless compound bows and recurve bows hanging on the wall. The store manager was a sturdy middle-aged man. When he saw a handsome middle-aged man walking in with a blonde boy, he reacted like everyone else, thinking that they were father and son. So he said to Tony, "Good morning, sir. Are you buying a bow and arrow for your child?" Link frowned. He thought he was Tony's son again. Tony and Link had been together for so many days, and he knew that Link hated this. He hated it too, so he said, "No, this kid is my friend. I brought him here to buy that bow." The store owner looked at Link in surprise and said to Link in a gentle voice, "What kind of bow do you want? I have a lot of cool bows here." Link interrupted the store owner and said, "I want a bow with a simple shape and a poundage of more than 100. The heavier the better." Link didn't know much about bows and arrows in the real world. They all looked strange, and he felt that they were not particularly easy to use. The shop owner was in a dilemma. He looked at Link's skinny body. A bow weighing more than 100 pounds? Can you pull it? At this time, a man and a woman walked in from outside the shop. They were dressed in casual clothes. The man was capable and the woman was beautiful. Tony looked back, and his eyes lit up instantly. He blew a breath and admired in his heart, "What a beautiful woman. Who is the silly man next to her?" Link also felt something was wrong at the first time. The footsteps of the two people behind him were very strange. They were different from ordinary people. It felt that these two people had extremely strong physiques. He thought they were killers who were bad for Tony. He turned around in a hurry, but he said how. The man and woman also looked at Tony with surprise. The two looked at each other. Tony Stark. Link was very surprised, because the man and woman were Hawkeye and Black Widow. Tony shrugged and went to talk to Black Widow Natasha. Hawkeye looked past Tony and looked at Link behind Tony. He just heard Link's rather arrogant speech. "Can a child like you pull a bow that weighs more than 100 pounds? The shop owner seemed to know Hawkeye, so he smiled and said to Hawkeye, "Sir, you are here. The bow and arrow you asked us to make are already made." Then he took out a pure black bow from behind. The shape was simple, but it was very heavy. Even this strong man had a little difficulty holding it. When Link saw the bow, his eyes lit up, and he said to the shop owner, "Sir, I want the same bow too." The shop owner looked strange. "Sorry, kid, this bow is custom made. It takes time, and the weight is as high as 250 pounds. Most people can't use it at all." Link said softly, "I can." Tony and Natasha were chatting enthusiastically, showing off his Russian. He didn't know the true face of the Black Widow at the moment, so he was not on guard. Natasha smiled and looked at Link. She knew Link. Agent Coulson had told her about this boy. Tony regarded him as his savior. They returned from the desert together. He was seriously injured and recovered after a sleep. Hawkeye snorted. Seeing that Link dared to compare with him, he said, "Kid, this bow is not suitable for you." Just as he was about to take the bow and arrow, Tony saw that Link seemed to like Hawkeye's new bow very much, so he said to Hawkeye, "Hey, sir, how about selling this bow to us? I can buy it for 10 times the price." Hawkeye snorted in his heart, superficial rich boy. So he said to Tony, "If you can pull this bow, I will give it to you." Tony heard the provocation in Hawkeye's words. Tony thought that he was flirting with Natasha and made the man unhappy. He intended to show off in front of Natasha, so he straightened his clothes and went to take the bow. He grabbed the handle and tried to pick it up. "It's so heavy." Tony picked up the black bow with both hands with a serious expression, and then he saw that several people had smiles on their faces. Natasha was still pretending to laugh, covering her mouth and laughing softly. The shopkeeper was holding back his laughter. Hawkeye was smiling mockingly, and even the serious Link was smiling. Link would naturally not let Tony embarrass himself, so he reached out and took the black bow and said to the shopkeeper, "Can I use a target here?" On the left of Link, there was a target specially for testing bows. The shopkeeper said, "Kid, you can try it, but be careful not to." Oh my god. Hawk's eyes widened. Link casually pulled out an arrow from the quiver, put the arrow on the bow and pulled it, not only pulling the bow open, but also pulling it fully. Without looking to the left, the bow was pulled open and the arrow was immediately shot out, hitting the bullseye. The huge force directly penetrated the bullseye and shot into the wall behind the target, and the tail of the arrow was still trembling. Hawk's eyes on Link changed completely. Natasha thought to herself, this boy's really extraordinary. Tony nodded. Well, not bad. It suits you very well, Link. Hawkeye changed his cold arrogance just now, supported his knees, lowered his body, looked Link up and down, as if he was looking at a treasure, and said with a smile, I underestimated you. Not bad, kid. This bow is for you. Let me see how good your archery is. Okay. Thank you to the book friend Menu Jiang for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you to the book friend Yuki for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you to the book friend 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to the book friend Atom Bombshell for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to the book friend Goozly and Geo for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to the book friend Good Girl MK for 2 recommendation votes. Chapter 9 Bullet Time. Link showed off his archery skills. Hawk's face suddenly became much gentler, and he looked at Link, as if a little girl looked at a cute pet, and he liked him very much. Link was shocked by Hawk's change of attitude, and took 2 steps back. Tony shrugged and introduced Link, the best archer in Hyrule. Really? Hawkeye thought Hyrule was the name of a club, and smiled. Sorry, I scared you just now. It seems that you are the same as me. Come on, let me see your archery skills again. Hawk's bow and arrows have always been accurate. For more than 10 years, he has not found an opponent who can match him in archery, and he feels lonely as a master. Now seeing Link, a 14 or 15-year-old boy, pulling a 250-pound strong bow with high accuracy, Hawkeye feels a little excited that he has found an opponent. Although he was only shooting at a distance of less than 30 meters in the store, Hawkeye was very sensitive to Link's calm temperament of definitely hitting from the inside out. So he spent money to buy a bow, asked the store owner to borrow the right to use the private archery practice range in the backyard, and excitedly pulled Link to compete with him outdoors in archery. The store owner himself was a lover of archery and admired Hawkeye very much, and Link's arrow was quite cool. Seeing that the two were going to compete in archery, the store owner naturally lent the venue generously and handed the store to other employees to take care of, and ran to watch excitedly. Tony muttered, what era is it now? Primitive weapons such as bows and arrows should have left the stage long ago. But he still decided to join in the fun, so he went to watch with Natasha. Link came to the backyard, which was very spacious. There was actually a frisbee launcher for practicing shooting. Hawkeye looked at Link and said, the store manager will launch the frisbee, and you and I will compete for it with the frisbee as prey. Let's see who shoots faster and more accurately. This black bow is given to you. Do you want to compete with Hawkeye in archery? Link nodded. Okay, let's have a competition. Hawkeye liked Link's calm eyes. Hawkeye thought he was the best archer in the world, and he had long wanted to find a genius apprentice to pass on his peerless archery skills. Now, he found Link, and he was the best candidate. Whether it was his strong arm strength or his calm attitude, Hawkeye was very satisfied. Hawkeye wanted to teach archery, but a stranger suddenly came and wanted to be his teacher. Whether Link was willing or not was still a question. So Hawkeye planned to show off his skills and show his peerless archery skills to convince Link, and then he could accept him as his apprentice. Link held a black arrow and Hawkeye held a white arrow. The owner put on his goggles and started the flying disc launcher. A white shadow flashed by. The two bent their bows and arrows at the same time, and the arrows flashed into a shadow. Pop. The flying disc exploded. Link opened his mouth slightly, looking disappointed, and Hawkeye smiled and looked at Link, but he was even more surprised in his heart. The white arrow hit the flying disc first, but the black arrow followed closely. In fact, both of them hit the target, but Hawkeye was faster. Natasha raised her eyebrows, her eyes full of curiosity. Hawkeye was her good friend and the most familiar one to her. They had known each other for many years, but this was the first time she saw someone who could catch up with Hawkeye in archery. Although Link lost just now, it was still shocking enough. After all, his opponent was Hawkeye. Then, the shopkeeper sent out the second flying disc, and Link's shoulders shook. He drew the arrow, put the arrow on the bow, pulled the bow, and shot the arrow in one go. The speed was so fast that before others could react, an arrow flew out, which was faster than the sword drawing technique of the Japanese swordsman. But with a pop, the white arrow pierced the flying disc first again, and the black arrow followed closely behind and missed. Hawkeye smiled proudly. Link bit his lip. He was unwilling to accept it. Link sped up his shooting, but Hawkeye did the same, and he was more experienced. He shot an arrow first, blocking the black arrow's route. The two arrows collided, the white arrow deflected, and broke the flying disc, while the black arrow deflected. The first time, Hawkeye took the lead with speed, and won the game. The second time, Hawkeye won with skill, and interfered with Link. Hawkeye smiled in his heart. Boy, although you have strong arms, archery does not only rely on arm strength, there is still a lot to learn. Tony was a little unhappy to see that Link lost twice in a row, and glared at Hawkeye's back. Such a big man, what's the point of bullying a child? Then he looked at Link and said in his heart, it doesn't matter if you lose, I will develop a high-tech next generation bow for you that can automatically aim, automatically shoot, and have explosions and BGM to help you beat this buzzcut. The shop owner was amazed. Hawkeye said loudly, sir, 3 flying discs will be sent out this time. Hawkeye then said to Link, you win if you can hit one of these 3 flying discs. Whoever loses must agree to a request from the other party. Link looked at Hawkeye calmly and nodded. Hawkeye smiled in his heart. This kid can't escape from my palm. The shop owner shot out 3 flying discs at once. Hawkeye wanted to completely convince Link this time, so he held his breath and concentrated, and went all out. He picked up the bow, and put 3 arrows on it. They flew out in a trance like a swaying candle flame, like a ghost. Natasha was terrified watching from the side. Not only her, but Tony and the shop owner were also shocked. Hawkeye's move awakened a primitive fear in them, the fear of hunters. It was as if they were the prey. No one present thought Link could win. Even Tony, who knew the least about archery, could see that Hawkeye was one level higher than Link in archery. But Link himself was the only one who refused to accept it. With one hand, he pulled out all the arrows in the quiver and scattered them in the air. Then, with great force, he thrust the quiver into the ground. Link stepped on the quiver and jumped up, leaping into the sky. He picked up an arrow and his bow was like a full moon. Suddenly, time stopped, and a familiar pulling sound came from all around. This was the low sound of friction between the plates in the earth that could only be felt when time was slowed down dozens of times. Bullet time. Link was suspended in the air, surrounded by floating arrows. He felt that his energy was rapidly decreasing. He quickly shot an arrow and hit a flying disc. Then he took the second arrow and the third arrow from his side. Snap, snap, snap. All 3 flying discs were smashed. This was not the end. Link looked back, took 3 more arrows, turned around and shot, and cut the 3 Hawkeye white arrows in the air in half. The energy tank was almost used up. Link fell down to catch his breath, and time returned to normal. The whole audience was silent. Tony blinked. I didn't see clearly just now who won, but Natasha pointed to Hawkeye's 3 white arrows on the ground. They were shot by Link and broken into 6 pieces. Hawkeye was stunned and murmured in his heart, how is it possible? How is it possible? He had the best eyesight in the whole field, and he clearly saw 3 ghost-like black arrows smashing the flying disc. He also clearly saw that 3 more black arrows shot off his own white arrows. The speed and unpredictability of the arrows were beyond the range that Hawkeye's naked eyes could capture. Even though Hawkeye was determined and far beyond ordinary people, he felt like the sky was falling at this moment. In the field he was best at, he was defeated by others, and defeated cleanly. He still wanted to be that person's master. Hawkeye now had the urge to worship Link as his teacher. Thanks to book friend Liverpool Hello for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend Shulians How for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend Chunai for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend Xidf00 for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend Good Girl MK for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend The Law of the Wilderness for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to book friend Puginan for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Atom Bombshell for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Gooseline Pride for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Shigwang Biaze for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Lige 1225 for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Hegemon for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend Schoolcase for 3 recommendation votes. Chapter 10 Monster Attack. Link felt empty. He had just used bullet time to forcibly take back the initiative from Hawkeye, which consumed a lot of energy, making him a little breathless. Hawkeye threw down his bow and clapped his hands sincerely. Awesome. I'm not as good as you. He quickly got over his frustration. Tony also clapped his hands. Not bad. Great game. He gave Link a thumbs up. Natasha came to Link and said softly, "Kit, you are very good. Would you like to go to a place with us to play?" Tony opened his mouth slightly and thought to himself, oh no, Link stole the limelight. This beautiful Russian girl has taken a fancy to Link. Link still had a calm face. He looked at Hawkeye and Natasha and whispered, SHIELD. Hawkeye and Natasha's faces changed at the same time. Link knows SHIELD. Looking at Link, they became alert instantly. Link had been staying at home for a few days. He finally went out and ran into Hawkeye and Black Widow. So he thought that S.H.I.E.L.D. had already targeted him and knew his strength, so they sent 2 capable men to arrest him and take him back for investigation. In this regard, Link chose to directly clarify the situation. But Link misunderstood. It was really a coincidence that he met Hawkeye and Natasha. Hawkeye, as an archery enthusiast, went to a bow and arrow shop to customize a private bow and arrow for fun. And Natasha and Hawkeye were good friends, so she accompanied Hawkeye to go shopping. Who knew that they ran into Tony Stark and Link? What a coincidence. The two were also wondering. Link didn't talk much, and he said S.H.I.E.L.D. as soon as he opened his mouth, which scared the two of them. The three of them were misunderstanding. Then they heard Tony's voice. Are there any wild animals around here? The owner replied, no. Wow. What is that? Link heard a strange cry in the distance, felt a wave of disgust in his heart, and heard 2 rustling sounds in his ears. Link's scalp exploded, and he shouted, be careful. He immediately threw himself on Natasha in front of him. Hawkeye thought Link was going to attack Natasha, so he reached out to grab Link's hair. What are you doing? Link shouted, get down. Hawkeye's outstretched hand was pulled back in a flash, but was still scratched by a thick arrow. He glanced over and saw a dozen red monsters rushing towards him, holding rough weapons and bows and arrows. Hawkeye was a good archer, so he was also an expert in dealing with archery. He pulled his chest and abdomen together, and another arrow tore off a piece of clothing on his chest and flew past. He screamed, what is that? Link raised his head from Natasha's chest, his eyes were sharp, and he shouted, it's a Pokeblin. Natasha also thought Link was going to attack her, and had taken out a dagger from her waist. When she was about to stab Link in the chest, she saw an arrow flying in front of her, and then she realized that Link was saving her. So the dagger stopped awkwardly in Link's chest and said, thank you. But Link ignored her. Seeing Tony at a loss, and the owner of the bow and arrow store next to him was shot in the head by a thick arrow, he took out a pseudo-Hylian shield from the weapon space, threw it to Tony, and shouted, protect yourself. Tony took the pseudo-Hylian shield and was stunned. How did you take such a big shield out of your pocket? Although Link lost his ability, he was surprised to find 2 days ago that his space ability to store shields, bows, and arrows, and weapons was still there. Not only the pseudo-Hylian shield, but also the pseudo-master sword was placed in Link's weapon space. This finally came in handy. Link glanced around and saw a total of 15 Pokeblins, 5 archers, and 10 close combat with wooden sticks and wooden spears. They were strong, like tigers and bears, and much more muscular than in the game. Link's heart was cold. Not only Ganon, but even Ganon's minions have come to this world. He immediately pulled out the pseudo-master sword from his trouser pocket, twisted his wrist, and drew a sword flower to cut off the arrow feathers from the air. He said to Hawkeye and Natasha in a serious tone, these are extremely vicious beasts. I need your help to eliminate these monsters together. Hawkeye looked at Link in surprise. Are you familiar with these monsters? Link nodded. Yes. Link didn't say much. He was a man of action. He put the black bow and an arrow in the weapon space and immediately rushed towards the group of monsters with the sword. Natasha sat up depressed and said to Hawkeye, "This is not a creature that should exist on Earth. Could it be a monster created by the military's biological experiment?" Hawkeye picked up the bow on the ground and looked at the shopkeeper who was lying on the ground with a thick arrow stuck between his eyes. He recalled the shopkeeper's enthusiastic expression when he talked to him about archery. He was furious and said coldly, "Who cares who he is? He's an enemy anyway." He immediately bent the bow and put the arrow on it. Natasha shook her head, feeling very regretful. It's a rare break. Another fight. Her eyes were stern, and she rushed over with the dagger in hand. Link had 1,000 thoughts in his mind. Pokeblin appeared. So what about Malabrin, Cyclops, Centaurs, and Guardians? How many monsters did Ganon bring? Snap. Link cut off the Pokeblin's spear with a sword, then knocked it to the ground with his shoulder, holding the sword with both hands and stabbing it in the face of the Pokeblin. Kill one first. Seeing the Pokeblins around waving wooden sticks and hitting him, Link used his cuff to force his body and flipped his body backwards. The wind caused by the wooden stick brushed Link's hair and immediately triggered bullet time. Link fell down to stabilize his body and accumulated strength swinging the sword and spinning. The sword light shot out, repelling the siege enemies. Then he jumped sideways to dodge the archers shooting in the distance. Then he took out the black bow, drew the bow, and put the arrows on it. Bang, bang. 2 arrows flew out, hitting the bow and arrow Pokeblin's forehead. With a scream, it turned into ashes. At this moment, Natasha sneaked over and picked up a Pokeblin that Link had knocked away with a powerful attack. After getting close to the Pokeblin's body, she suddenly jumped up, grabbed his head, and stabbed his throat with a dagger, immediately harvesting the remaining blood and killing one. Natasha jumped down, tidied her hair, and was about to see Link's battle situation when she saw 5 ferocious big-nosed red-skinned monsters surrounding her. Natasha was a little panicked and said, "You are not gentlemanly at all." The 5 Pokeblin looked at each other, screamed together, and swung wooden sticks to hit Natasha. Natasha cursed inwardly, "Damn it." When she saw that Natasha was about to be smashed into mincemeat, Link pulled the bow, and the bowstring sounded 5 times in a row. Snap, snap, snap. The 3 Pokeblins' heads were blown up. The 4th strike brushed past the Pokeblin's ear, and the 5th strike, the black bow snap, exploded into pieces. Link thought to himself, not good. The durability of the weapon is used up. Link's weapons have never been durable, and countless magic weapons have exploded in his hands. But Link didn't expect that he would bring this feature to the Marvel world. Helplessly, he was about to throw the pseudo-master sword, which could at least kill one more, leaving the last Pokeblin to Natasha to dodge. But at this moment, an archer Pokeblin in the distance, while Link was not paying attention, shot an arrow and hit Link's left shoulder. Thank you for the 4 recommendation votes from Void. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Phantom Banana. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Summer Special Drink Cold White Water. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Chunayu. Thank you for the 3 recommendation votes from 12. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Deshuaglo who doesn't take the blame. Thank you for 1 recommendation vote from SSGSNLZ. Thanks to Shulayan Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Yao Cajun for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Suding Gyuan for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Pudding Roy for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Jiang Hua for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shuiao 201711 to 9145518914 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guzalin Gao for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guadian Vnk for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Fet Heaven Yeo for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Big Brother of the Association for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Hegemon for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Daxiawan for 2 recommendation votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 11 Global Invasion. Link was eager to save people and was shot in the left shoulder. The arrow, as thick as a thumb, pierced his shoulder and hit the bone, almost piercing through it. Link's body was knocked down by the huge force carried by the arrow. Hawkeye and Tony shouted, "Link!" Link reluctantly pulled out the arrow and looked at the 4 red hearts in the upper left corner of his vision, and one of them fell out. During the flying process, Link thought of stopping, and the dome and combat experience in his body awakened. He held the arrow as a javelin and threw it fiercely, piercing the back of the Pokbulin's head. Hawkeye was not slow either and shot the last Pokbulin in the head with an arrow. But Hawkeye was still a little slow. Although he killed the Pokbulin, the monster's wooden stick still swung down, exerting enough force to knock Natasha's brains out. But Black Widow is not a vase that can only scream. Without the siege of 4 monsters, she can deal with the last one and easily roll away. He rushed to Link, helped him up, and said softly, "Thank you." Link shook his head and said, "It's okay." He stood up with the pseudo master sword, his sword eyes wide open, and the shining blade made the remaining Pokbulins dare not approach. Link killed 7 Pokbulins, Natasha killed 1, Hawkeye shot 1, and there were 6 left. After a brief hesitation, he howled and pounced. Hawkeye's shoulder shook, and he shot 3 arrows in an instant, hitting 3 Pokbulin heads. The only 3 remaining Pokbulin archers dodged, found cover, and shot at Link, who was the most threatening. Link held the sword in his right hand and intercepted the arrows. But he rushed in several times and was repelled by the continuous arrows of the 3 Pokbulin archers. Seeing that Link had no defense, Tony shouted, "Link, I'll give you the shield back." Link yelled, "No, you keep it." The most worrying thing at the moment is Tony Stark, who has not yet transformed into Iron Man. It would be fun if I was shot to death by a Pokbulin. Who will carry the nuclear bomb to blow up the aliens in the future New York war? Hawkeye rushed over and said, "Leave the remaining monsters to me and Natasha. You are injured and bleeding all the time, so step back first." Half of Link's body was red, but he didn't care. He could feel the wound itching and healing rapidly. Link saw Hawkeye holding 2 bows and arrows and said to him, "Give me a bow." Hawkeye said, "Your shoulder is injured. How can you still draw a bow and shoot arrows? Leave the remaining 3 to us. We still need to catch 1 to study." Then he threw a bow to Natasha. Link smiled rarely. "You can't draw a bow and arrow with 1 arm." Without saying a word, he snatched the bow and arrow from Natasha's hand and flew over. He had concerns in his heart. It was not that he did not trust Hawkeye and Natasha, but they were seeing Pokblins for the first time and were not familiar with their weaknesses. If they were killed by these seemingly stupid, but actually cunning monsters with cold arrows, it would be bad. Moreover, a prompt suddenly appeared in front of him. Kill 10 Pokblins 10/7. It was another new mission. There were only 3 left. He couldn't let others take it away. The last time he improved his strength, he was in a coma, but this time he woke up and immediately felt something was wrong. Link heard the voice of the goddess Hylia. Link ignored Hawkeye and Natasha's shouts, stepped on the fence, jumped up, kicked the bow and arrow with his foot, and 2 arrows were on the bow. Immediately start bullet time. He jumped very high, looked down and saw 3 Pokblins hiding behind the bunker. After aiming, he shot the bow and arrow and hit them instantly. Then his body turned abruptly in the air, and he saw an alert Pokblins aiming at him and shooting an arrow. Link saw that this was the one that had shot him in the back, so he used the pseudo master sword as a javelin again, threw it with all his might, and shot it out, piercing the head of the Pokbulin. Then he cancelled the bullet time, fell down gracefully, and eliminated all the monsters. Then he felt a sense of fullness in his body. The 4 red hearts in the upper left corner of his vision were all filled with a pop, and a new red heart was born. His physical strength also increased by 1/5. At this moment, his left shoulder had been completely healed in just a few breaths. Link trotted over and picked up his pseudo master sword. Looking around, he didn't find any monster drops, which was a pity. It seemed that he couldn't use the monster drops to refine medicinal materials. Yesterday, he excitedly asked Little Pepper to bring a cart of durian, wanting to make a fruit feast with life plus 20. He directly placed a big pot in the house and threw in 5 durians without peeling them and cooked them directly. Tony came to watch out of curiosity because he heard that it could enhance his physical fitness and he was almost suffocated to death. The smell even startled the alarm in Tony's private house. Jarvis shouted, "Toxic gas detected." Damie sprayed air cleaner randomly. Pepper was stunned. A bad day happened to come that day and ran back as soon as he entered the door. He thought Tony had noticed his conspiracy and was going to punish him with some terrible biological gas. It was always a mess. It was really a memory that he couldn't bear to look back on. Link had a headache just thinking about it. Link looked around and didn't find any other Pokebulin colonies. He thought, could these Pokebulins come here because of me? He felt a little heavy. If that was the case, then the owner of this archery shop was indirectly killed by him. Seeing that there was no danger, Tony carried the pseudo-Hylia shield, walked over laboriously, and returned it to Link. Seeing Link instantly put the pseudo-master sword and pseudo-Hylian shield back into his weapon space, Tony was stunned and looked at Link in a daze. "Did Doraemon give you the pocket?" Link said, "My other ability." Tony patted Link on the shoulder. Okay, my magical boy, what other secrets do you have?" At this time, Hawkeye and Natasha had already contacted the headquarters. They walked over with a serious face and said to Link and Tony, "We just reported the situation. Not only here, but in dozens of areas around the world, these red-skinned pig-nosed ferocious monsters have appeared and attacked humans everywhere." Tony was shocked. Hawkeye and Natasha showed their skills. He knew that the two were not ordinary people. He lost interest in Natasha and became alert. Is it a biological weapon developed by some organization? Link's heart sank. It seems that these monsters are not just teleported to his side, but are born on a global scale. This is even worse. Hawkeye and Natasha looked at each other, nodded, and said, "Then we'll take our leave first. Mr. Stark, Link, see you later." The impact of this incident was extremely serious, and the two hurried back to deal with the affairs. As for Link's matter, it was not important. Although Link had special abilities, the boy had saved Natasha twice, and his nature was pure, and he was not a bad person. There was no need to rush the current investigation. Thank you for the White-Haired Despairer 1 recommendation vote. Thank you for the Monster Bacteria 5 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Atomic Bombshell 3 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Bonelian Pride 3 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Magnetic Levitation Blog 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Fatev Yayo 6 recommendation votes. Thank you Pudding Roy 2 recommendation votes. Thank you 12 3 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Big Handsome Pot Who Doesn't Take the Blame 2 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Association Boss 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Bookfriend 14,065,162,335,712 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Anran Shangshan for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Lined 1225 for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Jiang Hua for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to Lazy Crossing for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Cuxiad for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bayford Desperate for 1 recommendation vote. Chapter 12 Zelda's Trail. Hawkeye and Natasha, the contact person, dealt with the tragic death of the store owner and hurried back to the headquarters. Tony was also in a bad mood and went home with Link. After returning, Link wrote down the characteristics of various monsters in the game and gave them to Tony, who then passed them to SHIELD. Tony was stimulated by this incident, so he accelerated the steps to make the Iron Man suit MK2. The progress was very fast, and the outside world tended to belittle Tony Stark's evaluation of stopping the sale of arms. Abade was still secretly contacting the board of directors, trying to expel Tony from the company. Tony was such a smart man that he naturally felt that the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable to him. He continued to make the Iron Man suit under pressure. Finally, after thousands of attempts, it was finally completed. Link clapped his hands. During this period, Tony's vigorous energy even helped Link make armor. Link jokingly called it the hero suit. This hero suit was far less sturdy and destructive than the MK2 Tony made for himself. It is just a small vest made of a layer of special liquid metal, which can release steel wings in an instant and gain the ability to fly, similar to a falcon, but it has no attack ability, weak protection ability, and can be bulletproof. But for Link, it is enough. He has a shield, a sword, and a bow and arrow, which is a natural humanoid weapon. Link does not need heavy armor protection, but it will affect his movement and speed. This is why not everyone in the Avengers will have a set of steel battle suits in the future. With the help of Tony, Link can fly in the sky even in the Marvel world. When Link uses the Pyraglider hero suit to fly freely in the sky, Tony Stark is very envious. After assembling the armor, he ignored Jarvis's dissuasion and wanted to fly directly. Link said to Jarvis, "Don't worry, I will protect Tony." Tony shook his head. "Thank you, no need. Your iron wings are not as fast as mine." After that, the thrusters under his feet started and rushed out. Link also tilted his head, triggering the Pyraglider on his body to pop open, flapped his wings, and flew out in a hurry. Link flew away, looking at a white dot in the night sky. He knew how high Tony had rushed. Link circled in the air, waiting to rescue Tony, who was frozen into ice. Then he saw a large iron block falling from the sky. Link rushed up and caught Tony. Tony breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you. It seems that there are many problems to deal with. By the way, how strong is your arm strength? How did you catch me?" The two fell and landed on the top of the villa. When Link descended, he felt that he seemed to have overlooked something, as if he had forgotten some plot. As a result, as soon as he landed, bang, the weight of the two people immediately crushed the floor and fell heavily in the garage. And Amy, seeing the two people smashed miserably on the car, seemed to remember something and sprayed carbon dioxide at Link and Tony. Not long after, Link received a report from Jarvis saying that Zelda might have been found. A girl with blonde hair, willow-shaped eyebrows and pointed ears appeared in Brazil. Link frowned. Why is the princess in Brazil? He thought of the Hulk. Bruce Banner was working in Brazil under a pseudonym. Is there any connection between the two? He told Tony and set off by plane to Brazil. Tony laughed and said, "I heard some news. Brazil said you can go there. It seems that you love that girl very much." Link blushed. Tony borrowed some bodyguards from Link, and Link declined. Are you kidding? He needs bodyguards. If he really meets the Hulk, Link will protect the bodyguards in the end. After Link left, Tony and Jarvis discussed improving the Iron Suit and planned to build MK3. At this time, he saw on TV that his company was holding a banquet, but he did not receive an invitation. He ran to the banquet with a trace of anger to see what Obadiah wanted to do. After the two left, Jarvis was the only one in the villa, and Phil Coulson, an agent of SHIELD, came to ask for an interview, but returned without success. 2 days later, Link came to the place where Zelda was found, a slum in Brazil. Link used the Portuguese he learned on the plane to ask around. He became more and more confused as he walked. He looked at the messy and short houses around him, just like those in Kowloon. His doubts arose again. Could it be that Zelda traveled to this world, just like I met Tony Stark, and ended up meeting Bruce Banner? He walked with the map in his hand, and came to a dead end. He frowned and turned back, and saw a few thugs with strange expressions, holding sticks and looking at him sideways, blocking the intersection. What this means is self-evident. Link was dressed brightly, with a thin body and a delicate face. He had no deterrent power, and was soon spotted by the thugs in the slum. The thug raised his chin, and said something in Portuguese. Link was very good at learning languages, so he knew what it meant. Be sensible and hand over the money. Link was a little annoyed. This was not the first time he had encountered such people. The public security in the slums was poor. In one morning, Link had encountered 3 robberies and 4 thefts. He was about to break a wall with one punch to scare off the gang of thugs. At this time, a girl's voice came from the blind corner, shouting in Portuguese with a strong accent, "Come up. Is it Zelda?" Link stepped back and looked, a little disappointed. No, it was a skinny Brazilian girl with skin like coffee, eyes like grapes, and bracelets on her wrists shining. The girl shouted, "Fool. Do you want to be beaten? Come up quickly." The thug stared at the Brazilian girl and shouted, "Tina, you are ruining our business again," and rushed over. Link grabbed the rope, jumped up, and climbed onto the wall. Tina shouted, "Run, run. They are catching up." Link was very curious about this Brazilian girl. Tina pulled Link to run left and right in the chaotic alleys, obviously very familiar. Tina ran and shouted, "Who are you, you idiot? What are you doing here for no reason? Link saw that he had gotten rid of those hooligans, so he asked Tina, I want to know where your bracelet came from. Tina hurriedly let go of Link, turned around and looked at Link vigilantly, covering the bracelet with her hand, her eyes wide open, very vigilant. What? You want to steal my bracelet too? I tell you, I'm not afraid of you. This is my territory. I have a lot of helpers. Link shook his head. No, I want to know. Who gave you the bracelet? Tina's bracelet was neither gold nor silver, and the pattern was strange. But Link was very familiar with it. It was something Zelda had worn before. Has this little girl Tina seen Zelda? Sorry, the update is late today. The record on the writer's assistant is that it was discontinued 30 or 40 seconds late. Tomorrow will be added as compensation. Thank you for your support, all book friends. Welcome to Vote and Collect. Thank you for 1 recommendation vote for Gay Go to Death. Thanks to Pudding Roy for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to WooMO for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wujazao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guzilian Pride, 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Bookfriend 201701250333284000 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to LL4 7 recommendation votes. Thanks to Atomic Bombshell for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Chunyu for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 201807191715592227 for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Shulan Zhao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Monster Jun for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Hegemon for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Wei Yachin Love for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Good Girl MK for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Go Familiar, Die for your recommendation vote. Chapter 13 Encounter. Link tried his best to show his kindness and said to Tina in a gentle voice, take me to see Zelda, I'm her friend. Tina said angrily, humph, I don't believe it. I don't know Zelda or anything like that. Don't try to fool me. But his acting skills were too poor. Link saw through that this little girl knew Zelda at a glance. Seeing that Tina was about to run, he quickly stepped forward and grabbed Tina's arm. When Tina's wrist was touched by Link, it immediately burned, like gunpowder touching a flame, and she screamed, help. There are bad guys. Tina's voice was extremely harsh, and Zaoji's ears hurt. He said, listen, I'm really Zelda's friend. But Link was not good at speaking, and didn't know how to comfort Tina. Suddenly, several young girls and boys ran out of the alley. Their clothes were tattered and loose, and I don't know where they were picked up. Hearing Tina's cry, he rushed over with scissors, mop, crutches, and iron rods, chirping and shouting, beat the bad guys, beat the bad guys. Tina, we are here. Seeing that it was a group of fierce children, Link stomped his feet suddenly, and several cracks appeared on the ground. The reinforcement were frightened and looked a little scared, but when they saw Tina struggling desperately in Link's hands, they were afraid for a short time, and then they mustered up their courage and rushed over, shouting, I will fight you. Alas, Link's personality did not allow him to hurt the children, so he could only drag Tina with one hand and wave his other hand to take the crutches. With 2 whooshes, he knocked down all the weapons of the children. He stomped his feet again, and the ground shook. Several children sat on the ground, panicking and at a loss. Tina shouted, don't worry about me, run. The children also shouted, we won't run. Without weapons, they bared their teeth and bit Link fiercely. Link threw a child in each hand. After the child fell to the ground, he stood up and rushed over again without flinching. This childish bravery of risking one's life for a friend made Link laugh. Link said with a smile, aren't you tired? My name is Link, and I'm Zelda's friend. The child was about to rush over again, but suddenly he was stunned. Link. Tina repeated in a rather strange tone. Link's body was shocked. The tone of Tina saying Link was exactly the way to call Link in the Hylian language. The child was hostile just now, but now he suddenly cheered, found Link, and circled around Link. Tina originally held Link's collar, but now she hugged Link very intimately. You should have told me earlier. If you had told me you were Link earlier, I would have taken you to see Sister Zelda. I thought you were a bad guy. Link said, you really know Zelda. How is she? Tina suddenly looked sad. Sister Zelda, she. Her voice became lower and lower. Link's heart tightened, and he hurriedly asked, what happened to Zelda? At this time, the gangsters who were chasing Link came over. When they saw Link, they threw a rusty fruit knife from a distance and shouted, I told you to run. You're a foreigner, you want to die, right? Link was worried about Zelda, and was provoked by the gangsters, and his heart was surging. Tina saw the gangsters throwing the flying knife directly, and she screamed in fear. The children around her hurriedly ran away and screamed, Shabby is coming. The flying knife was spinning, and the gangsters didn't control it well, and it went towards Tina. Tina panicked for a moment and actually covered her eyes to avoid running away. Link made a prompt decision, stretched out his hand, and accurately pinched the blade with his index finger and thumb, and grabbed the fruit knife. Link pushed away the shocked Tina, holding a fruit knife in his hand, and asked with a strange expression, who among you is called Shabby? The three thugs said at the same time, we are all called Shabby. Behind Link, a child hiding also added to Link, they are the bullies in our rally. They are called the Three Shabby. Link said in a deep voice, really? He knew that according to the Chinese translation, Shabby should be translated into Harvey, but it still felt a little weird when he heard it for the first time. Tina shouted, Link, let's run. You can't beat Three Shabby alone. Link was in a bad mood because of Zelda, so he was too lazy to hold back. With a flick of his wrist, the fruit knife pierced into the stone under his feet, just like cutting into a cake. The Three Shabby saw Link's move, looked at each other, and no one wanted to admit defeat, so they rushed up with their weapons. Bang bang bang. In less than 10 seconds, the Three Shabby were beaten into pig heads by Link, and groaned on the ground. Link is good at weapons, but not so good at melee combat, not even as good as Hawkeye and Natasha, but it is enough to deal with Three Shabby. After a fierce beating, Link vented his anger, and turned around to see Tina and her friends, looking at Link with shining eyes, full of admiration, cheering, Link, you are worthy of being Sister Zelda's hero. Oh, Link. Oh, Link. Link was very anxious and spoke faster, don't shout anymore, take me to see Zelda. So Link was led by a group of children through the alleys, and came to a dim little house. It was already afternoon. Link was silent throughout the whole process. Is Zelda sick? Or did she meet Ganon's minions? Tina pointed to the small house that looked like a container and said, Sister Zelda lives in it. Link was about to go in. A man's voice came from the side, speaking in Portuguese that was even more awkward than Link's. Tina, are you here to play with Zelda? This is Bruce. Link turned his head and saw the man's appearance. He couldn't help but say his name, Banner. This time Link got into trouble. Banner was chased by the military and fled all over the world, which had already triggered paranoia. When he heard the blonde boy dressed in American clothes call out his name, he suddenly became nervous, and the watch on his wrist that detected emotional fluctuations soared to 160 in the blink of an eye. Link shouted, Banner, calm down. Calm down. I'm not here to catch you. After saying this, Banner panicked even more, and the emotion detector rose to 190, and he turned around and ran away. Tina said innocently, why don't you introduce yourself first? That's what happened just now. That's why I misunderstood you. So Link shouted, Banner, I'm Link, a friend of Zelda. Banner had already run to the corner of the alley. When he heard Link and Zelda, he stopped and wondered, Link. The window upstairs banged, and a girl poked her head out. Hearing this tender voice, Link raised his head excitedly, and saw the girl he often dreamed of, since he crossed over, Princess Zelda of Hyrule. Thank you all. This work is currently ranked 16th on the second dimension signing list. Please support me more enthusiastically. There is one more chapter before 12 o'clock. When I think of Brazil, I think of football. When I think of football, I think of Xavi. When I think of Xavi, I think of... Thank you to the following book friends for voting for support. If there are any omissions, please forgive me. Thank you for your 6 recommendation votes at noon. Thank you Union Meng 3 recommendation votes for support. Thanks to book friend 15,071,919,110,008 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shishi and Shibuki for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Eyes of the Fallen Angel for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wujaya Ziohu for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shulayan Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wuemo for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend 201701250333284000 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Monster Jun for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Daigay for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Wuemo for 6 recommendation votes. Chapter 14 banner. Link. The blonde girl leaned out of the window, her delicate face full of surprise, her eyes shining brightly, and her eyes met the boy's eyes downstairs, crossing to time and space to reunite and intertwine. Under the sunlight, the girl's hair and shoulders, with a faint glow, are extremely beautiful. It freezes a picture worth hiding in your heart. Princess. Link was distracted. Link, you. Zelda wanted to say something, but she was too excited. Her body center of gravity went out of the window, and she didn't grab the windowsill for a while, and fell head first. Tina and other friends were in a panic underground, and Banner hurried over. Link, save me. Zelda hugged her forehead, fearing that she would hit her head. But the feeling of weightlessness was fleeting, and she fell into a familiar embrace. When she let go of her little hand, Zelda saw Link's smiling face. Princess, I found you. Link just smiled and said nothing. But Zelda, who was familiar with Link's taciturn personality, immediately found this sentence from this warm smile. Zelda stammered, me too. Then Link's expression changed, and he put Zelda on the ground with a thump. He looked Zelda up and down and asked hurriedly, are you okay? Are you injured? Did you encounter Ganon's minions? Tina said you were in trouble. Huh? Zelda looked at Tina in confusion, and Link also looked at Tina. Tina and the group of friends said in a childish tone, yes, Zelda has never played with us since she was captured by Uncle Banner. It's so pitiful. Link's forehead was covered with black lines. So this is why you frown when you mention Zelda? Question mark? At this time, Banner came over with an embarrassed look on his face. 3 question marks popped up on Link's forehead, and he asked, Princess, what's going on? Zelda tapped Tina's forehead gently, and said with a smile, what do you mean I was arrested? I'm learning. Then she took Link's hand, and introduced him to Banner. Teacher, this is my most important person, Link. Link, this is my teacher. He's super awesome. He's a great man. He knows a lot. He's awesome. Link was even more confused. Teacher? Banner looked at the emotion recorder returning to normal and regaining his usual gentleness and smiled. You must be Link. I often hear Zelda mention you. Zelda often pesters me to teach her scientific knowledge, so she calls me teacher. Zelda enthusiastically told Link what she had seen and heard. Link, do you know? We actually traveled to a star called Earth. And there's more. Link smiled a little embarrassedly. Zelda, the princess of Hyrule, the heretic in the magic world, the yandere girl who advocates science and tries to feed Linkler frogs. Coming to this Marvel world dominated by science. On the surface, it is like coming to a great treasure house, and naturally it is ecstatic. Banner invited Link into the room. The house was very dim, and it was particularly crowded and noisy when a few children entered, and Link listened quietly to Zelda's story. Zelda was still wearing the travel clothes of Hyrule, and it seemed that she had not encountered the unfortunate situation of wearing pants to travel through time like Link. Link ate and drank at Tona's house, while Zelda carried the supplies of Hyrule and lived a comfortable life by selling various rupees, various hexagonal gems. But because of her beautiful and handsome appearance, she was harassed by local ruffians. Zelda sealed Ganon and lost her power. Although her physical fitness was much stronger than that of the Earthlings, she was no match for multiple men, so she ran away everywhere and finally met Banner and was rescued by Banner. After knowing Banner, he was impressed by Banner's profound knowledge and admired Banner very much. After Banner rescued Zelda, he was a little regretful. He was on the run and didn't want to meddle in other people's business. But after Zelda's repeated requests and money offensive, mainly the latter, Banner was short of money. Banner reluctantly accepted Zelda as his student. As for Tina and a group of children, Zelda saw that these children were bullied by local gangsters. Zelda had a strong sense of justice, so she organized Tina and others to protect each other. After all, Zelda is the future queen of Hyrule, and she has a strong leadership temperament. In addition, she often buys snacks and footballs for Tina and others, and they quickly become one. Zelda held Link's hand and told the story slowly. The children around were bored and ran away laughing. Banner was studying and taking notes, crackling and tapping on the shabby notebook of the last century. He turned his back to Link and Zelda, pretending to be indifferent, but in fact he felt sad inside. The sweetness between Zelda and Link, and the pink atmosphere that could be seen from a distance, undoubtedly stimulated Banner, who was transformed into the Hulk, and reminded him of Betty Ross, the person in his heart from another country. Link was a man of few words, just listening to Zelda's story, without saying anything of his own. But despite this, it was night. Although the alleys in this slum were very crowded and messy, at night, it was surprisingly quiet. The residents carefully maintained this tranquility to avoid disturbing each other. Banner handed over 2 glasses of water, and Link and Zelda thanked him. Banner looked at Link's long ears and said, "Zelda told me about people like you. Hylians, right?" Link said, "Yes." Banner looked at Zelda, his expression very gentle. "Are you taking Zelda away tomorrow?" Link said, "Yes." Banner said, "After Zelda leaves, I should leave too. I always feel that I have been discovered by the military." Zelda was a little reluctant. "Teacher." Banner smiled bitterly, "You're just a little girl. You can't follow me around the world." Link was silent for a while, organized his words and said, "Banner, you can try to communicate with the Hulk in your body. Try to reconcile with the power in your body. It may help you." Banner's expression changed, full of hatred and regret, and said, "Impossible. I want to destroy him. This kind of monster should not appear in the world." Link continued to be silent. Sure enough, it was not realistic to persuade Banner to reconcile with the Hulk now. For Banner, his successful career, smart mind, and virtuous girlfriend, all these happy lives were ruined by Hulk. Apart from anything else, a normal man was forced to be a monk by Hulk. Who wouldn't be angry? Zelda said, "It's getting late. Link, I'll take you to rest." Then she ran into Banner's knowing smile, and was extremely shy. After suppressing Ganon, Zelda and Link traveled in the Hyrule continent, sleeping together in the wind and rain, and neither of them felt weird. But now there are outsiders. Zelda inadvertently said that she wanted to rest with Link, and suddenly a hot red face came out. Link's face changed and said, "Not good." Zelda was surprised. Is she disliked by Link? At this time, Link said, "Someone is coming. Thank you for the following book friends recommendation votes. If there are any omissions, please forgive me. Thank you for your 6 recommendation votes at noon. Thank you for you 9 Meng 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to book friend 15,071,919,110,008 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shishi and Shibuki for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Eyes of the Fallen Angel for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wu Jiazao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shulayan Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wu Mo for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to bookfriend 201701250333284000 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Monster Jung for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Daigay for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Wu Mo for 6 recommendation votes. Chapter 15 Tony Calls. Zelda felt the subtle footsteps, this kind of disguised, deliberately careful step-by-step slowly sound, most awakened Link. He immediately knew that it was General Ross who brought people to catch Banner. Link turned to Banner and said, "You go first, I will stop them." Banner said angrily, "You stop them, you are a child, even if you are superb martial arts. Can you stop the guns and live ammunition? Link casually summoned the fake Master Sword and fake Hylia shield hidden in the weapon space, which scared Banner. Link said, I can. Zelda exclaimed, her mouth slightly opened. Great. If you bring the Master Sword and Hylia shield, we will be safe. Link shook his head, it's just a fake. Banner refused, you two little devils, follow me. If they catch you, they will definitely torture you. He pulled Link and Zelda's wrists and ran. But then Banner paused, he found that he couldn't pull Link. Link reached out his hand, grabbed the wall, and pressed it hard, like inserting a finger into a cake, and pulled out a piece of iron sheet. This battle line of power surprised Banner. It was the first time he saw Link's power, and then he understood what Zelda had said to him before. Link is very strong. What did that mean? So Banner nodded and whispered, be careful. He crept down along the window. Several soldiers suddenly broke open the door, looking for Bruce Banner's traces, but they only saw two blonde boys and girls standing there, with the windows behind them wide open. Link said, I want to see you. Before he could say the word chief, several soldiers suddenly opened fire, and the flames instantly lit up the dim room. Link hurriedly reached Russell behind him, and he was furious. These soldiers opened fire regardless of anything, attacking like wild animals. This attitude of despising other people's lives angered Link. Link blocked his chest with a shield, blocked a few bullets, rushed towards the soldiers, knocked over a few people, and kicked them unconscious. Link walked out with Zelda, and saw Emil Bronsky in the corridor, the future hatred, pointing a gun at Link, with a red dot of the sight on Link's forehead. Emil said, Kit, where is Banner? Link said coldly, he's gone. Zelda said angrily behind Link, what are you doing? Why are you arresting the teacher? Emil's eyes lit up. Teacher, is this Banner's student? Catch him, maybe you can threaten Banner. He immediately shook a finger back, and a soldier behind him shot Zelda and an anesthetic needle. Zelda did not dodge or evade. Her bright big eyes stared at Emil with anger, without any fear, because she knew that her knight would protect her well. Link chopped with a sword, cutting the anesthetic needle in half in the air. When Emil and others saw Link draw his sword, they immediately opened fire at the same time. Link's pseudo master sword danced wildly, blocking the bullets with a clang, and fell to the ground. Emil exclaimed, and then he saw Link suddenly shuttle in, leaving a pale golden shadow. In the air, he could hear the pseudo master sword trembling slightly, as if the god of death was licking his throat. Link swung his long sword, tapping it lightly like a dragonfly's wings, piercing Emil's weapon, and cutting it in half. He thrust the blade forward, and placed it on Emil's shoulder, saying coldly, tell your men to throw away their weapons. Emil gritted his teeth and said, impossible. I'm not talking to you. Link looked at the recorder on the soldier's chest. General Ross, don't force me to kill people. Ross said hatefully, put down your weapons. Then Link held Emil hostage, and found General Ross. Ross was also surprised to see Link in person. He suspected that Link might have also been injected with the hormones of the super soldier, so he became so fast as a ghost and his sword was as frightening as a ghost. Seeing the shield in Link's hand, this sense of Captain America became even stronger. Link let go of Emil and pushed him over. Except for Ross, all the soldiers pointed their guns at Link and were very alert. But Link and Zelda beside him were not afraid at all. Zelda's face was gloomy. General, what's wrong with your men? They just shoot at others at will. Are they soldiers or thugs? Ross ignored Zelda, looked at the pseudo master sword in Link's hand, and said in a low voice, who are you? This kind of power, is it Banner's test product? After seeing Link's incredible speed and sword skills, Ross deeply suspected that it was Banner who developed the perfect gene mutation drug, which made such a 14 or 15-year-old boy become a Superman, who could block the intensive attack of bullets, and was strong enough to cut off guns. This kind of power aroused Ross's greed. Link said, this kind of power is all obtained by my practice. As for Banner, he is not a monster, he is trying to control his power. You need to give him time. By then, there will be one less monster on the earth, and one more guardian of justice. Link said the last word and sighed. He was not good at speaking long paragraphs. Ross's eyes were grim. It seems that you know a lot of inside information. My name, Bruce Banner, and his secrets. You know so much, but you still say such naive words? Banner, he escaped with the most terrible weapon in our country. Do you think I will let him go? Link knew Ross and wanted to capture Banner, mass produce the mutant genes in his body, and create more terrible humanoid weapons. In the Marvel world, the government has done countless stupid things, and Banner is the worst victim. Link said, Banner is a person, not a weapon. Ross sneered, naive, you are just a child with power. No matter how strong your sword skills are, and how fast you are, can you beat modern weapons? Do you know who you are against? At this time, behind the two of them, a soldier suddenly poked Link's lower back with an electric baton, trying to shock him and arrest him. Ross just lip-synced for a long time. Zelda shouted, be careful. Then two soldiers reached out to grab Zelda. Link tilted his head, and the iron wings behind him popped out instantly. He moved his shoulders and blew away all the people who approached. Ross gave an order and was about to open fire. The situation was tense. But at this time, a phone call suddenly came. The female soldier handed over the phone and said, it's Mr. Stark calling. As a former arms dealer, Tony had contacted Ross several times. After Ross answered the phone, he heard the iconic arrogant tone, General Ross, long time no see. Ross looked at Link and said to Tony, I'm on a mission. If you have something to say, please speak up. Tony's voice was very relaxed in the receiver, and he also heard the sound of music. I have a friend named Link who is traveling in Brazil. I hope you take good care of him. Ross was angry. How do you know I'm in Brazil? Tony smiled and said, it only takes 30 seconds to hack into your military system. Then his tone became serious. I warn you, if you point weapons at Link and his girlfriend again, you will bear the consequences at your own risk. I guess you have also seen the magic of Link, but I tell you, he is not your test subject, let alone someone you should touch. Thank you to the association boss for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you to Yuzhashushan for 4 recommendation votes. Thank you to Zyakase for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to Yun Mengan 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thank you to the Fallen Angels I for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Gay Man, Go to Hell for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Pride in the Bones for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Afternoon for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Book Friend 201701250333284000 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Xiu Kuti for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Young Man from the Wu family for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Time Is Not There for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shulayan Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Big Brother of the Association for 2 recommendation votes. Chapter 16, Battle Against Hulk. Link took this opportunity to grab the electric baton of the man who attacked from behind, kicked him away, and knocked him into a wall. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Then he held the electric baton and shocked the soldier who attacked Zelda twice. With a sword, the 2 soldiers fell to the ground with blood spurting from their necks. Seeing that these guys didn't know how to live or die, Link had already run out of patience after attacking Zelda several times. He said coldly, do you think I dare not kill you? His eyes swept over, and no one dared to look at him. Ross shouted, stop, stop. Tony's stern voice still rang in the receiver. General, I can see everything you did. Take care of yourself. Tony warned Ross very arrogantly, and then hung up the phone with a beep. Ross was so angry that he wanted to fly back to the United States to beat Tony up. He glared at Link fiercely and said, Humph, you are Tony's man. Although Tony has now given up the arms business, he still maintains a good relationship with the United States government. Ross didn't want to offend Tony. He just admitted defeat and stopped coveting Link's power. Tony has hacked into the military system now, and even Link and Zelda know that they are surrounded. Now the cameras and recorders have become Tony's eyes, and Ross has no way to move. With Link's hearing, he had already heard Tony's voice in the microphone, and his heart was warmed. Link said, Tony is my friend. Zelda asked, is this the person who often helps you? Link smiled and said, yes. Tony stepped forward to stop it, and Link finally stopped the conflict with the military. Ross's face was gloomy. I'll let you go this time. He didn't even look at the 3 soldiers killed by Link. Anyway, in order to facilitate driving them to do various special tasks, these guys' personal information has been erased, and they are dead from the social level. General, I don't mean to embarrass you. Link's tone was much worse, and he said, Banner, Hulk's power is uncontrollable. You try to use it as a weapon, but you can't do it. Ross roared, you don't need to teach me a lesson. Then he left with his soldiers. Link saw Emil, wiping his neck, his eyes turned cold. Zelda hesitated, then the teacher. Link smiled. We helped him by so much time. He ran away a long time ago. We roar. There was a thunderous roar, and the source of the sound seemed to come from far away, but the sound was very penetrating, as if 2 armies were firing at the side. The surrounding glass snapped and shattered. Zelda covered her ears, and Link's face turned pale. It was the roar of the Hulk. Link pulled Zelda and rushed over. Ross saw Link following again and said angrily, don't think that I dare not touch you, just because Tony protects you. Link sneered, I'm protecting you. No one can suppress the Hulk except me. Link recalled the plot and thought to himself that it was not good. It seemed that Banner met the enemy in the factory again, and was enraged, and turned into the Hulk. This is a slum with a large number of people. When Hulk goes crazy, he will destroy countless houses, and kill countless people. Link must stop him, and he wants to see the strength of the strongest Avenger. Link holds onto his shield. Zelda was at a loss. Link, is that the voice of the teacher? Link said, yes. Zelda had never seen Banner's transformation. Almost all those who have seen it are dead. The group hurried to the source of the sound, and saw a tall green body standing in the shadow of the factory. He was shirtless, with muscles like rocks, a cold expression with disordered madness, and a face like a knife and an axe, with a hint of handsomeness in the frenzy. It was cool at the beginning, but it became more and more funny in the later stages. There were 3 incomplete bodies lying on the ground, and Hulk had a few black bloodstains in his pants. Emil rushed over with a gun, and was stunned when he got close. He didn't know that this was Banner himself, and thought that Banner created the second monster, because Emil believed that Link's inhuman strength also came from Banner's experiment. Hulk roared, roar. 2 soldiers with low psychological quality fainted on the spot. The rest of the people, even if they didn't faint, were thrilling, as if such a roar directly shook the soul and the body apart. Without listening to Ross's order, the soldiers opened fire directly, focusing on Hulk. Bang, 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 bang. There was a burst of gunfire. Hulk blocked his eyes with his arms, and the bullets hit Hulk's body, as if peanuts fell on a plate, unharmed. Hulk roared and rushed into the crowd, knocking people and horses to the ground, and there was a scream. Ross also saw the Hulk's power for the first time. He knew that there was no chance of winning this battle. He shouted, run. Emil glared at Hulk, and turned to run away quickly. Although he was yelling in his heart, damn it. I don't want to run. I want to fight. Emil knew that, if he rushed forward, he would just die. But the soldier's speed was not as fast as Hulk's. Hulk rushed over, grabbed 2 soldiers in one hand, opened his arms, and was about to beat them into a bloody mess. Link shouted, jumped up suddenly, took out a bow from the weapon space, bit off the arrow with his teeth, swallowed it into his stomach, and pulled the bow with the arrow to the full length and shot at Hulk. Bang! Hulk's face turned black, and his body leaned back, and was hit by Link. Link broke the bowstring with this move. Link threw away the useless bow, and rushed towards Hulk with his shield. Bang! Hulk was knocked away, and the 2 people in his hands fell down. Link shouted, get out of here. Ross stopped and stared at Link, who shot and hit Hulk, and knocked him down. This thin body and the burly giant of Hulk formed a horrifying gap. Emil's eyes were burning, but he gritted his teeth. He envied and hated Link. Ross looked at Zelda, a beautiful girl with smooth blonde hair, standing quietly, without any fear. Ross asked, who is this boy? Zelda smiled and said, his name is Link, and he is my knight. Ross was a little distracted. He regarded this sentence as a girl in love addressing her lover, but he didn't know that Link was indeed Zelda's guard knight. He saw the shadow of his daughter in Zelda's calm face. In the past, my daughter also smiled happily like this, but later. Ross said, how did he become so strong? Zelda shook her head, I don't know, Link, he has been so brave since the first day I met him. like this big monster. A big guy. Link is very skilled in dealing with it. Before Ganon's attack, Zelda had seen Link fight against centaurs, cyclops, big stone monsters or other horrifying monsters many times, and Link had never been afraid. It can bring Zelda endless sense of security. Link held the shield and waited for it. Hulk stood up, growling in his throat, very angry, and wanted to eat Link alive. Link glanced at the 5 red hearts in the upper left corner and thought, this may not be enough for Hulk's punch. So Link decided to defend himself in this battle, dodge the bullet time, and wait for an opportunity to attack, and win by counter-attacking the enemy with a shield. Although the armor is only the gliding hero suit made by Tony, the blood volume is only 5 red hearts. But Link is fearless. Just kidding. He is a brave man who can kill Ganon with a pot lid. No matter how powerful the attack is, he will bounce it back with his shield. Thank you for the 3 recommendation votes from the Eye of the Fallen Angel. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Phantom Banana. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from the Wu Family Boy. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from Shu Lions Hao. Thank you for the 2 recommendation votes from the Good Girl MK. Thank you for the 3 recommendation votes from V Magnetic Levitation Blog. Thank you Yun Menga and 3 recommendation votes. Thank you 12, 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Goozeline Pride, 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Monster June 2nd recommendation votes. Thank you Anti-Terrorist Villain 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Tingfeng Zioyao 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Darkstar Dark 3 recommendation votes. Thank you DML 123,456, 5 recommendation votes. Thank you Shibuki 5 recommendation votes. Chapter 17, Fight Only If You Can't Win. Tony had a very fulfilling day. During the day, he went to the terrorists' lair and blew up their lair, which solved the problem of being imprisoned for 3 months. Then he took a walk with 2 military planes. The whole day's journey was equivalent to a little more than a circle around the earth. At night, he calmed down and forced himself to drink chlorophyll. The taste was disgusting, but disgusting meant health. There was nothing he could do about it. Looking at the strange green liquid in the cup, Tony thought of Link, who was in Brazil at the moment. Strange association. He thought that only a guy like Link would enjoy drinking chlorophyll. He was idle and had nothing to do. He remembered something and hacked into the military system. Jarvis immediately reported, saying, "Sir, Link met General Ross. What a coincidence." Tony hurriedly put the cup aside and connected the video signal of the military recorder to his computer. When he saw the conflict between Link and Ross, he immediately called to stop Ross. After hanging up the phone with a beep, Tony snorted, "Ross, I'm saving your life. You have to thank me. Otherwise, you might as well get killed by little Link." He secretly used Ross's recorder to watch the situation over there, just as if he was watching a live broadcast. He drank chlorophyll leisurely while watching what Ross was going to do. Poof. As a result, a mouthful of green juice spurted out, and Tony coughed violently. He just saw the Hulk's brilliant appearance. The green thriving muscles filled the screen. Even if Tony only watched the video, he felt a strong hormone smell hitting his eyes. What kind of monster is this? What is the military doing? A biochemical crisis? Retreat quickly, retreat quickly. The video that came in was shaking. It seemed that this green big guy had beaten these poor soldiers into a panic. Then the view stabilized quickly, and Tony saw Link holding a shield and facing the Hulk. He was so shocked that his mouth could not close. "Link, what do you want to do? Fight with this big guy?" Then he saw in the video that Link was ready for battle, and the Hulk punched him. Clang. With a flash, the Hulk flew out, as if Link was an explosive. Tony's face changed. "Jarvis, help me analyze the strength of the two." Jarvis analyzed some data based on the information in the blurry video and reported it to Tony. Tony rolled the cup with his hands playfully, muttering, "So, with my newly developed MK3, I can't beat this big vegetable and Link?" Jarvis flattered him innocently, "You are absolutely right." Tony tutted and was very unhappy. The iron suit that he had worked so hard to develop was actually no match for 2 people who used physical strength, which made Tony, who believed in science, feel bad. Tony felt a little nauseous looking at the Hulk's plump and vivid green skin. After all, He had just drunk chlorophyll that was almost the same color as the Hulk's. As the two fought, Tony's face became more and more gloomy. He saw that Link's strength was actually far inferior to the Hulk's, and he was just using the shield counter that violated common sense to resist. This shield counter was not 100% successful. Once it failed, the Hulk punched the shield. Link vomited blood and flew out, crashing through a wall, and scared Tony to stand up. Although Link finally struggled to stand up, the shield had already deformed and was about to crack. This battle was unexpectedly clumsy and thrilling. The Hulk was fast and powerful, so Link could only defend with a shield. The fist and shield collided, and the sound effects were all broken. Although the two did not have a fancy fight, one was just defending, and the other was attacking, but its danger was even more dangerous than the flash of swords. No, Link can't beat the Hulk. His life will be in danger. Link's shield counter failed again. He might be killed by the Hulk on the spot. Listening to the sound of fists and shields colliding every time, even if he was just watching the extremely poor quality video, Tony was affected by the battle between the two. His heart felt very uncomfortable, as if he was witnessing an atomic bomb explosion. Tony hurriedly called Ross again. "Hi, Ross. It's me, Tony Stark again. What are you doing? How come I saw my friend fighting with a moldy piece of bread?" Tony was thrilling just watching the video, not to mention Ross saw it with his own eyes, so much so that his voice was dull when he answered Tony's call. "That's one of my weapons. You'd better not ask about it." Tony's infuriating voice came. "Oh, what you said is so vague. I'll check it myself." Ross woke up and roared, "Don't touch military secrets." Tony's slightly surprised voice came. He had stolen the information of this big monster. "Bruce Banner? This green giant is actually him?" Ross endured, his voice a little ferocious. "I'm warning you for the last time. If you dare to disregard my military secrets again, I will." Tony interrupted Ross, a little impatient. "You don't have to threaten me. I don't care who the green giant is, whether it's Bruce Banner or Einstein. Tony took a look at the information. "Hulk, it's your responsibility, right? Then take this big guy away quickly and let Link leave." Tony was mainly worried that Link would be killed by Hulk accidentally. As for these secrets, he didn't care. Tony was just worried about Link's safety. Ross also reacted and laughed. "You are worried about Link, right? Sorry, I won't help you. In front of me, there are two strongest humans in the world fighting. Such precious information, I naturally can't miss it." Ross expected Link and Hulk to lose both and catch them to take back for experiments. When the camera is covered, Tony comes to ask for people and then say that Link was beaten into minced meat by Hulk, leaving Tony speechless. Tony was furious. Rose said coldly, "Do you think that my soldiers and I can intervene in this kind of competition between people?" Tony knew that Rose could not help, so he immediately shouted, "Give the phone to Zelda." Rose snorted and threw the phone to Zelda. Although Zelda was from Hyrule, she was very sensitive to technology products. She understood computers, notebooks, and mobile phones in a few days. She said naturally, "Hello." Tony shouted, "I'm Tony Stark. It's nice to meet you, Miss Zelda. I guess Link is very happy now. In fact, I'm not in the mood to chat with you. The enemy that Link is facing now, the Hulk, is a rare monster with power comparable to an atomic bomb. Link can't beat him at all. Let Link escape quickly." Zelda was also watching the battle, and her heart was hanging on Link. She naturally knew how powerful the Hulk was, and she also knew that, if Link was not careful, he would be beaten to death. But Zelda shook her head. "No, I can't persuade him. Link is in this state now. I can't stop him." Tony had a headache. "Little girl, your boyfriend is going to be beaten by the monster. You are so calm." Zelda blushed and said, "No. Link is trying to awaken the power in his body. Because he can't beat the Hulk, he has to fight him. Only in this way can he gain the power to match the Hulk. Link is getting stronger. I can't stop him." Tony was stunned. "Link? Is he still getting stronger?" At this time, Link, with blood all over his mouth, suddenly shouted, and his body suddenly covered with a light blue aura. The author's thank you message is full. It's time to think of a more space-saving format. Thank you Hegemon for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you Yuki for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Attack on the Crazy Bun for 6 recommendation votes. Thank you Xiang Heng Dio for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you Guzali Enkyo for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Wujia Zioho for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Monster Jun for 8 recommendation votes. Thanks to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Chun Yu for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation Blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Gentleman for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Mibua for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Chuzao Yangwan for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Dragon for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Dream Sense of Direction for 8 recommendation votes. Thanks to Yun Mengan 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Association Big Brother for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to 1,139,931,564 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 160,731,220,353,387 for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Lost Liang for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 150,719,191,100,008 for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Ui Lin for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to SSGSNLZ for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to 46 recommendation votes. Thanks to 42 recommendation votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 18 Darkle's Protection. Since the beginning of the battle, there has been a sound in Link's heart, a sound that seems to break like a shell. He can feel that some dormant power in his body is awakening. Link found that every collision with Hulk caused the wall of heart to break, causing Link to give up defense and use shield counters again and again to activate the power in his heart. Bang! The last time the shield was countered, a sound similar to breaking glass suddenly came from his heart, followed by a heroic shout. What a beautiful view. It was the voice of the drum hero, Darkle. Zelda, who was watching the battle, covered her mouth and couldn't believe this scene. The light blue gas on Link's body suddenly condensed into the appearance of Darkle, one of the 4 heroes, standing behind Link like a mountain. In Link's heart, he heard the almost whispering voice of the goddess Hylia, 10 times of shield countering the Hulk, the protection of the drum hero Darkle. Awaken. The Hulk was startled by the sudden appearance of the ghost-like giant, and looked at him vigilantly. Darkle laughed loudly. Good brother, you actually made me wake up. Link wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, grasped the pseudo-master sword tightly, and directly discarded the pseudo-Hylian shield that was almost scrapped, and stood with the sword in both hands. Darkle glanced at Zelda behind him and waved. Hey, little princess. Link finally didn't disappoint you. Zelda put her hands on her chest, and was about to say something. The Hulk roared, causing Darkle to turn around. He patted Link on the back with his big hands. Is this a new battle? It seems that our mission is not over yet. Good brother, just use my power. Ha. The Hulk roared and rushed over, pressing down like a mountain. Link held the sword in both hands and waited, took a deep breath, and swung it out, and the shadow of Darkle behind him also took off the rock-breaking giant sword behind him, and swung it out suddenly. Bang! The sword energy hit the Hulk's arms. Darkle's powerful strength poured into Link, filling Link's body with a force that was like a volcanic explosion. The pseudo-master sword could not bear this huge force at all, and instantly exploded into pieces of light. The sword energy shone everywhere, destroying the surrounding buildings. The Hulk's arms cracked, and although his bones were broken, he flew backwards and crashed through more than a dozen walls before stopping. This time was different from the previous counterattack with a shield. It was a head-on collision of strength. The Hulk was completely defeated by Link. The airwave generated by the collision between the two even blew away the surrounding soldiers, shaking their facial features and bleeding. Only Emil and Zelda could barely stand, which showed how fierce their strength was. Tony was terrified and shouted, "Jarvis, analyze the power these two people just generated." What did he see just now? Tony couldn't believe his eyes. Link just hit the Hulk away in an instant, and the Hulk's body actually broke the sound barrier in the air. And Link took a step like a mountain. Boom. The ground shook violently. Darkle laughed and said, "Good brother, that's it. Go on to win. Go on to fight." Then Link's knees trembled, and he felt the power in his body was losing control. Darkle touched his head and said, "Link, you can't bear my power for too long. You have defeated the enemy. I will fall asleep first. Wake me up if you need me." Then the light blue light of his body suddenly dissipated like wind and sand. Link staggered forward 2 steps and almost fell. Zelda rushed up to support Link and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Link shook his head and was supported by Zelda. More than a dozen holes in the wall broke, and he came to the Hulk. Ross and others were seriously frightened. After a while, they reacted and hurriedly followed. After being knocked away by Link, the Hulk was motionless. At this moment, lying in the same place, his muscles squirmed, faded, and shrank, turning into the appearance of Bruce Banner. Banner sat on the ground, looking terrified, his arms trembling, and he looked very weak. Ross ran over and yelled, "Come on, catch him." Banner barely stood up and looked at the soldiers around him, at a loss. Just as the soldiers rushed over, Link whispered, "Everyone, step back and let Banner go." Link's voice was very tired and not loud, but all the soldiers stopped, as if they had heard the order from their superiors, and dared not move again. If Hulk's power is like the devil, then what is Link who conquered the devil? The thrilling scene just now, the pure power burst out, made everyone in the audience unforgettable for a lifetime. The soldiers were intimidated by the power, and dared not disobey Link's words at all. Ross yelled, "How dare you disobey orders?" But he suddenly shuddered, and found that Link was looking at him. His anger was mostly covered by fear. His tone softened a little and he said, "Banner is my mission. Don't stop me from doing my job." Link whispered, "Let him go." Zelda supported Link, and said to Banner, "Teacher, go quickly. Leave this to us." So Banner stumbled away, and disappeared into the night. Ross's face turned blue and purple, but he didn't dare to stop him. Tony was also at home. He swallowed his saliva, and said to Jarvis solemnly, "It seems that we have to establish a new project. What do you think of the name of Anti-Link Armor?" After a night of frenzy, Link took Zelda back to M Country on a plane the next day. According to the plot, a bad day is about to attack Tony. Link needs to go back to help Tony. He can't guarantee the future timeline. It will definitely be Tony who defeats a bad day. Zelda held her mobile phone and read the books in her mobile phone attentively, and was amazed. Link asked Zelda what she was looking at, and Zelda said, "This world is so magical. There are more than 6 billion people." Zelda then thought of her pitiful kingdom. Currently, there are only 2 people left in the kingdom of Hyrule, sitting on a plane in another world. It seems that there is a long way to go to revive Hyrule. Their plane is about to land. At this moment, the huge airport has been cleared, and several SHIELD agents including Hawkeye and Natasha are waiting for the plane to land. Hawkeye frowned. This is the first time that the almighty SHIELD has to ask others for help. Natasha gathered her hair. "Compared to this, why do we have to ask others for help? I still owe that child a favor." Hawkeye said, "I remember that you were saved by Link twice, so it's 2 favors." Natasha glared at Hawkeye, a little unhappy. Hawkeye missed his newborn baby, and thought of the terrible monster that made him helpless. He thought to himself, "Should I retire and enjoy my old age?" Our editor is great. The work changed its status yesterday, and I recommend it today. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for Guzillion Pride, 1000 Kidian coins reward, and 3 recommendation votes. Thank you for your 100 Kidian coins reward. Thank you for Mayor 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Kunid 5 recommendation votes. Thank you Hexigay 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Muayangs 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Attack of Crazy Bun 6 recommendation votes. Thank you 11,399,931,564 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Wuemo 6 recommendation votes. Thank you Dragon 2 recommendation votes. Thank you V Magnetic Levitation Blog 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Yun Mengan 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Clown XX1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Shulayan Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Alank for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to 12 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Haha Jekai for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Fallen Angels I for 3 recommendation votes. Chapter 19 Stone Monster. When Link and Zelda got off the plane, they felt the commotion of the passengers in front of them in the aisle. Link and Zelda looked at each other. What happened? When they walked down, they saw a group of people in black, surrounded by a man and a woman. They were the people from S.H.I.E.L.D., led by Natasha and Hawkeye. Link frowned. He knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. would find him sooner or later, but he didn't want to see S.H.I.E.L.D. with a large group of people to invite him for tea. As soon as he got off the plane, Hawkeye frowned, feeling a little embarrassed, so he said to Natasha, "You go and talk. You are better at socializing than me." Natasha twisted her waist and walked forward, looking at Zelda. This is an underage girl who looks about the same age as Link, with beautiful appearance, delicate features, delicate skin, and a long blonde hair as bright as Link. When she is with Link, the two are more like siblings than lovers. As a world-class spy, Natasha is very good at judging people. She saw Zelda's extraordinariness at a glance. Although she looked delicate and immature, she exuded a graceful temperament from the inside out, as if she was a young queen. Natasha recalled Zelda's information. Her birth was mysterious, and she appeared out of thin air in the slums of Brazil. Like Link, her origins were unknown. Natasha greeted Link. "Hello, handsome boy, we meet." Link nodded, but his expression was a little stiff. Natasha said, "Well, the information you asked Mr. Stark to send to our shield is very important. Thank you very much." Link shook his head. Natasha thought about how to deal with this kind of taciturn person. But at this time, Zelda spoke. She stepped forward and said, "You need Link's help, right?" Natasha said, "Yes." At this time, Hawkeye came up and said to Link, "We at shield are in a bit of trouble. We really want to ask you for a favor, Link." Link asked, "What is it?" Hawkeye said, "Come with us first. We can't explain this matter clearly. It's so strange." So Link prepared to go to shield with Hawkeye and others. He was also wondering what happened at shield that required Link to come forward and solve it. Link was about to get in the car, and Zelda was about to follow him. As a result, a man in black stepped forward and said in a stiff tone, "Only Link is allowed to go to shield." Link looked at the man in black and felt that he looked familiar. He seemed to have seen him in Captain America 2. He should be a Hydra traitor in shield. He said, "If the princess, no, Zelda doesn't go, I will stay with her forever. Then I won't help you with this." The man in black said indifferently, "It's not up to you." Then he said to the others, "Take this girl away." Hawkeye frowned, and Natasha waited curiously for Link's reaction. Link grabbed the man in black's wrist with a swish, locked his joints, took the pistol from the man's waist, and kicked it away. His movements were smooth, as if the man in black was sticking his butt out for Link to kick. As soon as Link held the gun, all the other black-clad people around him drew their guns. Hawkeye shouted, "Enough. I guarantee this girl. Take your guns back." Link raised his eyebrows. Hawkeye can't control these people. Then he pulled the pistol with both hands, like tearing a pancake, and tore the gun into pieces. This violent destruction of the firearms made the men in black look at their pistols involuntarily. For the first time, they felt that this thing was unreliable, so they took back the pistols. Link said coldly, "Zelda, let's go." Natasha blocked Link's way and whispered, "Forgive us, this is not our intention. You have to know that there are many people in shield." Link immediately heard something from the words. Natasha knew that a force had infiltrated shield. As for whether Natasha knew about Hydra, it is unknown. In this time and space, has Hydra exposed its claws in advance? Link found that the situation deviated from the plot in his mind, and he was a little unhappy. Hawkeye came over and said, "Don't worry about these guys. Let's go, Link." He took Link and others into the car and drove to shield. Zelda said in the car, "That shield, do you have internal disagreements?" Hawkeye said coldly, "Little girl, these things are none of your business." Then he felt that his tone was a bit harsh, and his tone softened. "Oh, sorry, they shouldn't treat you like this." Zelda knew that Link was not talkative, so she asked for Link. What difficulties did you encounter? Natasha said with a confused smile. Well, we encountered some things that can't be said to be life or machinery or some rare natural phenomenon. The marble in our shield building suddenly moved and it would hit people. If people don't get close to the marble, it won't move. Once you get close, it will move with a bang and start attacking people. We tried to use all kinds of weapons, but we couldn't destroy these stones, so we were in a dilemma. Link provided us with some information about monsters before. Although there was no other mention of this kind of stone monster, I think, Link, you should have a way to deal with these stones. After listening, Link and Zelda smiled at each other. That's it. Link couldn't help but smile. In order to prevent the monsters from Hyrule from coming to Earth and causing serious casualties, he told Shield about the characteristics of various monsters. But he forgot about one strange monster. This monster would disguise itself as a large rock on the side of the road. When people approached, it would grow limbs and start to attack people, and it was indestructible. Even if Link chopped it with a two-handed sword of the gods, not even a bit of stone chips would fall off. But this stone monster has a ridiculous weakness. It is like a turtle. If it is lifted up and placed on the ground, it cannot turn over and will explode. Everyone in the Hyrule world knows the weakness of this monster, so Link ignored it. He didn't expect that this stone monster would also travel to the Marvel world and cause a lot of headaches for Shield from top to bottom. Several people came to Shield and entered the hall. There was a group of people gathered on the west side. Link and others walked over and saw two big holes on the wall. Two giant marbles were lying quietly on the ground. The surrounding area was in a mess. The floor was broken, with bullet shells and traces of fire. There was also a damaged stone crushing machine. It seemed that Shield had tried every possible way to get the two stone monsters. Zelda couldn't help laughing. Link walked forward. Natasha hurriedly stopped Link. Don't be impulsive. It will suddenly attack people. Barton was hit by a stone and almost broke his ribs. Hawkeye coughed twice, feeling embarrassed. Link walked forward and saw the two marbles moving with a click, turning into stone monsters with simple limbs, shaking their stone fists and swaying towards Link. Although they look naive and a little funny, it was really painful to be hit. I guess Hawkeye suffered from this. Thank you Fallen Cheowang for your 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Good Girl MK for your 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Fallen listening to the Wind and Zioao for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Seishao's 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Chun Yu for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Darkstar Drac for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 160,515,163,041,839 for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Mengwai for 1 recommendation vote. Chapter 20 The girl is telling. The stone was trying to attack Link. The shield people watched a tender boy approaching foolishly and hurriedly shouted, "Boy, don't go over there." Link smiled and dodged the stone monster's fist. He lowered his body and raised a 1 meter square marble block to his head with a low shout. The people watching around exclaimed, "How powerful is this boy to lift such a big stone?" But there are so many talented people in Shield, so it's not surprising that a little strongman appeared. Link shouted, "Get out of the way." He threw the stone out with force. Everyone hurriedly dodged it, but the stone hit the ground and exploded. The fragments of stone still injured 2 people, one of whom was a gentle bald man. Link looked at the explosion site. A hole was blown out on the floor, but the stone monster still didn't drop anything, which made Link a little disappointed. He did the same thing and lifted up another stone monster. The stone monster's limbs were flailing around, and it was very flustered. Link gently put it on the ground, but the stone monster couldn't turn over no matter what. It was probably because it felt desperate and felt that it would never turn over in its life, so it exploded with a pop and chose death. Link spread his hands to Hawkeye and Natasha and shrugged, meaning, this is how it should be dealt with. Hawkeye's eyes almost popped out. These 2 stone monsters were tested by all kinds of weapons in Shield. All kinds of guns, laser guns, heavy hammers, diamond cutters, acidic liquid corrosion. They were all used, and they were almost bombed with nuclear bombs, but they couldn't get rid of them. Such a difficult guy was actually lifted up by Link, put down, and exploded by himself. This is too There was a burst of cheers and applause from the crowd. As long as these two stone monsters were not eliminated, everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. would be uneasy. You said that two big stones, placed in the S.H.I.E.L.D. building, would be feared by everyone. Even the president would be beaten. As the strongest intelligence and spy organization in the world, if you can't even deal with two rotten stones, where can you put your face? Amid the cheers of the crowd, a bald black man with a crooked eye patch walked out. Although the temperature was not cold, he wore a smart black coat, which seemed to be a show of coolness. Link knew at a glance that this was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury. Nick clapped his hands symbolically and said in a low voice, "Not bad, not bad. Link, these monsters are indeed related to you." Then Nick put his hands behind his back, looked around, and said, "Are you done watching the fun? Then go back to work." Seeing the boss coming, everyone dispersed as if nothing had happened. She waved at Link and said, "Can you come to my office for a cup of coffee? Well, or a glass of juice?" Tony Stark is called Tony, while Bruce Banner is called Banner. Natasha Romanoff is called Natasha, while Buster Barton is called Hawkeye. I originally planned to call Marvel characters by their first names or last names, but after thinking about it, I decided to forget it and call Marvel characters by the names that everyone is most familiar with, regardless of uniformity. Don't worry about the names. Link and Zelda don't even have last names. Several people came to Nick's office. Link pulled Zelda's hand and asked her to explain. The two had already communicated on the plane. Link didn't like to talk, and he didn't like to explain. This kind of work was left to Zelda, and Link himself would be a quiet and peaceful princess. A demon king who wants to destroy the world has come to Earth. As soon as Nick sat down, he was shocked by Zelda's words and stood up. Hawkeye stood aside with his arms folded, looking unhappy. He always had this expression, and said, "Demon king? Well, this is not our business scope." Natasha raised her eyebrows and said nothing. Nick coughed twice. "Tell me in detail." Zelda and Link looked at each other and said, "We come from a kingdom called Hyrule. I'm the princess of the Hyrule kingdom. There used to be a demon king named Ganon there. 100 years ago, he destroyed our country. This Link is my personal knight." Nick, is this girl telling me a fairy tale? Although Nick didn't know what the relationship was between Ganon and these monsters that suddenly appeared on the earth, he decided to continue listening. Because the expressions of the young man and woman were very serious, Nick was proficient in interrogation techniques, and he could see that the two blonde boys and girls had no intention of coaxing him. Nick and Natasha, who were proficient in reading facial expressions, also nodded, indicating that the two were not joking. Zelda continued to talk, briefly introducing the story of Link and Ganon. Hawkeye was stunned when he heard this. Natasha was also wondering if the two children were crazy while talking about fairy tales about demon kings, heroes, and princesses in a serious manner. Zelda actually had many concerns and planned to hide the fact that she and Link came from another world. But Link said that it would be okay to tell everything. Link thought it over carefully. After all, he would have to fight Ganon in the future. If he was secretive, it would arouse other people's suspicion and curiosity and cause a lot of trouble. It would be better to tell everything directly, whether others believe it or not. The Earth is about to welcome the Thor in Norse mythology. What are two time travelers? The Marvel world is in chaos. 100 years later, Link woke up from his slumber, freed the 4 sacred beasts, and finally defeated Ganon with a sword of exorcism. When talking about Link, Zelda's expression was very gentle, as if covered with a layer of sunset afterglow. She witnessed Link's awakening, amnesia, confusion, fighting, and injury, until he crossed mountains and ridges, and stood in front of her, just like the first meeting 100 years ago. During the 100 years of imprisonment in the castle, Zelda's feelings for Link have only increased, but have settled quietly like fine wine over the years. But Nick was stunned. Natasha blinked and sat casually at the corner of the table. The sweet and pink atmosphere of this young couple made Natasha, the slightly weathered Black Widow, feel mixed emotions. If her future CP is the Hulk, her mood will probably be even more mixed. As for Hawkeye, he thought this blonde girl was innocent and cute. If his future children could be like this, retirement would definitely be wonderful. We had suppressed Ganon permanently, but unexpectedly, Ganon traveled through time and space and came to this world. as Link and I are forever entangled in fate. We followed Ganon here. And the monsters that appeared on this earth are all Ganon's minions. Well, I'm done. Zelda blushed a little. She was worried that others would think she was crazy. Nick coughed twice and said, well, how can you prove what you said? Zelda was speechless, and Link said in a deep voice, Blood Moon. Thank you Minecraft to 500 starting coins for award support. Thank you Noah's Ark IE2 recommendation votes support. Thank you Bookfriend 201808111621253811 1 recommendation vote support. Thank you Yun Mengan 3 recommendation votes support. Thank you Aosha Dagon 3 recommendation votes support. Thank you Bookfriend 201712503333284000 2 recommendation votes support. Thank you Naming is very difficult 1 recommendation vote support. Thank you Kilto 4 recommendation votes support. Thanks to Wujaya for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to RHPK for 18 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guzilian Pride 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Association Boss for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Attack of Crazy Buns for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Shulayan's How for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Zero Happy Magic for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Dream Sense of Direction for 8 recommendation votes. Thanks to Jiang Hua for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 160,515,163,041,839 for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Fallen Angel's Eyes for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Mew Yangs for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Phantom Banana for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Noah's Ark IE for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Nothingness for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to you for 4 recommendation votes. Chapter 21 Tona's Request. Nick frowned and asked, what is a blood moon? Zelda took over the conversation and said, it is a phenomenon caused by Ganon. Ganon will use his power to stain the moon, making it red. On the night of the blood moon, monsters will be resurrected, including the 2 stone monsters in your palace. The building. They will also be resurrected. There will be no end unless Ganon disappears. After a pause, she continued, according to my perception, the blood moon in this world is about to come. Link also had this premonition. Zelda looked at Nick and said, when the blood moon rises, countless monsters will be resurrected, and you will believe us. Zelda has a special temperament, and her gentle voice makes the suspicious Nick feel that this girl will not lie. Nick nodded. It's good to see it with my own eyes. Although it sounds nonsense, if it really happens in front of me, I will believe it. As for you, Nick propped his elbows on the table, crossed his fingers, supported his chin, and looked at Link. Link, you are quite skilled. Even Hawkeye treats you differently. According to my report, you have defeated a terrible monster. It has a strange origin, terrible power, and is taciturn. It's really worrying. Unmonitored power is always dangerous. Zelda frowned. Does S.H.I.E.L.D. want to monitor or imprison Link? Nick said, are you willing to join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Link shook his head. Nick's face sank. If so, it makes it very difficult for me. Natasha stood up, wary of Link, and Hawkeye was also a little nervous. What if Nick said he wanted to imprison Link? There is no guarantee that Link would not suddenly attack and hurt people. Link's expression also became gloomy. His sword, shield, and bow are broken now. He has no weapons in his hands, and his boxing skills are far inferior to Natasha. If they were to imprison him and let many agents rush over, Link would be helpless. But he dared to come here. Of course he had the confidence. The confidence is the heroic soul sleeping deep in his soul. The awakened heroic soul Darkle. This time, the heroic protection is not just Darkle's defense in the original game, but directly obtaining all the power of Darkle, even to the point of competing with the Hulk in strength. Link is not afraid of any conflict at all. Nick suddenly smiled. That's a pity. I won't keep you here for long. I have official business. Link was stunned. Nick laughed loudly and said, haha. Kid, you think too narrowly of S.H.I.E.L.D. and me. We won't do anything to you. You are not the Hulk. Your power is controllable. You saved Natasha, and we believe in your character. In this case, why should we try to control you and make you angry? Hawkeye and Natasha were relieved to hear what Nick said. They didn't want to fight with Link. First, they all had a good impression of Link, and second, they felt that they couldn't beat Link. Nick smiled on the surface, but snorted in his heart. Last night, Tony sent a letter to S.H.I.E.L.D., stating that he was the guardian of the two boys and girls. The meaning was very clear. Don't touch him. Link said goodbye, and was about to leave. He was a little anxious in his heart. Now Tony might be plotted against by a bad A at any time, and he had to go back quickly. At this time, Agent Coulson walked into the office with an urgent look and said, Tony's secretary Miss Boz called us, and said that Tony might be in danger. Link's face changed. The plot has developed to this point. He hurriedly said, a bad A covets the wealth of the Stark Group and wants to plot against Tony. It was a bad A who caused Tony to fall into trouble in the desert before. Nick made a prompt decision. Coulson, contact Miss Boz and take people to Stark Company to control a bad A. Link said, take me to Tony's residence. He is in danger. Natasha stepped forward, gathered her beautiful red hair, and kissed her red lips. I will take you there. I recently bought a new car. On the road with few vehicles in the United States, a gorgeous red sports car was speeding at a speed that could piss off the traffic police. Natasha drove the car to the extreme speed. The engine sound and the surrounding scenery that passed by quickly were enough to scare those men who coveted Natasha's beauty. But Natasha looked out of the corner of her eye and saw that Link and Zelda were not afraid at all and looked at her car curiously. Zelda was very interested and exclaimed, what a magical technology. Then the next sentence made Natasha frown. Can this car eat fruit? Natasha didn't know how to answer. I'm afraid not. Zelda said, Link's motorcycle can eat fruit. Natasha, it's worthy of being Link's motorcycle. She could only say this. At this foul speed, they soon arrived at Tony's residence. Link got off the car, and Natasha said, let's go up quickly. Then she saw that Link didn't go in, but ran to the wall. Natasha said, aren't you going to take the stairs? Link shook his head, jumped suddenly, and climbed on the wall. Natasha was stunned. He wants to save time to climb up. There is no handhold on that wall. Zelda said, Link is particularly good at climbing walls. Natasha opened her eyes wide and saw Link climb up like a gecko in a few seconds, pushed open the window and entered. At an incredible speed. In that room, there was the old dark reactor that Link had kept. Link jumped in and saw Tony lying on the ground, rubbing hard towards the ark like mud. Link hurriedly said, I'm here. Tony smiled weakly. Did you have a good vacation? It's a pity that you missed a wonderful show. He was talking about his transformation into Iron Man and bravely entering the desert. Link thought to himself, I didn't miss it. I saw it twice. He ran to get the old arc reactor, took it out, looked around, and didn't find Amy. Where did this guy go with a fire extinguisher? Without saying much, Link turned Tony over. Link had replaced the reactor once before, and Tony was a little scared. He hurriedly said, be gentle oh. Link grabbed the connector and stuffed it directly into Tony's chest. At this moment, Natasha and Zelda had just exited the elevator and saw the scene of Link's hand reaching into Tony's chest. They were both stunned. Natasha raised her eyebrows. You punched Tony through the chest. The arc reactor was inserted into Tony's chest. Tony roared and struggled to stand up, shouting Pepper. Boz is in danger. Natasha said, our S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are protecting her. Tony shook his head. Then it's not just Pepper who is in danger. Link, I need your help. Tony never asks for help from others. It's always others who owe him. He rarely owes others. Now he wants to ask Link for a favor. Pepper is in danger. This old arc reactor has little power left. Tony is not sure he can save Pepper. He must rely on Link. Link nodded quietly. It's almost 12 o'clock. A new day, biting fingers, votes. Thanks to the book friend Hang Hyeon Falu for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to the book friend Darkstar Dark for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to the book friend Yu Yulin for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to my book friend I'm Bingsa for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to my book friend Xiao Obeys Emperor for 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to my book friend Guzalin Jiao for 1 recommendation vote. Chapter 22, Battle Against a Bad A. Tony staggered over in his iron suit, which made Zelda's eyes light up. She wanted to take off the armor and study it carefully. Tony said, "Yo," and greeted Zelda. He threw a helmet to Link, hugged Link with both hands, and started the engine under his feet without saying anything. The airwave hit Tony, and he smashed the glass with one punch and flew out. Tony said, "Link, how fast is it now? Can your body withstand it?" Link wore a helmet and said sullenly, "Yes." He felt that he had overlooked something. While recalling, Tony quickly rushed to Stark Tower. The original plot took place at night, but now it was daytime, and there were people all around. The riots were more serious and the impact was worse. Tony came through the air holding Link, and the pedestrians below screamed, shouting UFO, and ran away everywhere. The brave ones took pictures, but the speed of the Mk3 was too fast. With the current mobile phones, they could only take a picture of the after image like a mosquito wing. Link yelled, "Oops." Tony hurriedly said, "Link, what happened?" He was afraid that Link's body would have problems during the high-speed flight. Link yelled, "I need weapons and a shield." Tony, Link was helpless. "It's okay, I'll use the materials on the spot later." Tony said, "Okay, thank you. You go save Pepper and take her away. I'll stop a bad A to delay time. By the way, the 2 weapons I gave you are made of materials for military aircraft. How did you destroy them?" Link was depressed. "I was too strong and broke myself. It's always like this. I always have to find weapons again." Link was very resentful about this. Tony laughed. "It doesn't matter. I will make weapons for you with gold titanium alloy. Make 10 spares." Link smiled in his heart. 10 copies are far from enough. "I'm going down first." He suddenly broke free from Iron Man's arm, and Tony shouted, "Be careful." He fell down and jumped into the pool in front of the building, exploding a large splash of water. Tony shouted, "0 points." After Link fell into the water, he jumped up and rushed into the building. He lowered his body and took down a fire manhole cover to use as a shield. As soon as he entered the building, he heard muffled sounds and gunshots from inside the building and ran up the stairs. He saw a Bad A driving the Ironmonger to attack, while Agent Coulson protected Pepper and retreated. The Ironmonger fired a cannon, and Link rushed forward, holding the shield with both hands. Zeng. The cannon rebounded in an instant, and the Ironmonger exploded. Link picked up the manhole cover and shouted to Coulson, "Take Pepper away." Pepper had never seen Link's ability, and now she was shocked and covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Oh my god." She didn't expect that the boy who had been staying quietly at Tony's house would have such ability. Abade was furious. "Link, what kind of monster are you?" The cannon rebounded to the Ironmonger's armor, but did not cause much damage. In the original time and space, Ironmonger was not damaged, even when he fell from a high altitude, forcing Tony to blow up the reactor. Ironmonger's armor looks very scary in a dark environment. Compared with Tony's Mark series, Ironmonger gave up appearance, lightness, and beauty, and its shape is bulky and ugly. It is a full-scale pragmatism and a terrible weapon specially prepared for war. Link held the manhole cover and was ready, but then, he was a little discouraged. There was no handle on the fire manhole cover, so it was not easy to hold it, and it was particularly funny. Ironmonger's attack was very fierce, and Link tried his best to deal with it with the inconvenient protective gear. After covering Pepper and others to leave, Link dodged continuously, rolled on the ground to avoid the bombardment, and was soon forced to the window by Abade. Abade sneered, "Goodbye." He fired and shot at Link, who had no way to retreat. Link threw the manhole cover behind him, breaking the glass and spinning. Link did a backflip and stepped on the manhole cover. He used his feet to perform a shield counter, but the action was too awkward and the shield counter was not completely successful. The manhole cover was broken and damaged, and the shelling was refracted and hit the building. Link was thrown out by the huge force. Tony waited for an opportunity in the air and said, "Although you got 0 points in diving, you are quite suitable for surfing." He caught Link, dived and dropped him to the side of the road, and then flew towards Ironmonger and Abade for a decisive battle. From a distance, Abade exclaimed, "Tony, you are not dead." Link limped around and looked around. He was now unarmed and wanted to find a weapon that was convenient for him. Surrounded by a panicked crowd, watching the battle in the sky, Link sighed. These guys are not afraid of death, and they dare to watch the excitement. As a result, he saw a little kid holding Captain America's peripheral around shield, shouting, "I'm Captain America. I'm going to beat the bad guys." His unlucky father hugged him tightly. Link hurried over. "Lend me the shield." He said he was borrowing it, but he snatched it directly without the owner's consent. The child was about to cry, and the parents were about to scold, but they saw Link's clothes on the back door, and a pair of steel wings spread out and flew up suddenly. This shield is very well made, and it is made of a lighter metal. Although it is a toy, because it has a handle, Link holds it very well. He circled in the sky, trying to find a knife or a sword. Then his eyes lit up, and he flew down quickly, and found a group of underage hooligans in the alley, who were holding samurai swords to scare people. Link suddenly fell down. The thug turned around, and saw Link holding the Captain America shield. He walked over and said, "Give me your swords." The thug laughed. "This fool. He's crazy and wants to be Captain America and act like a hero." Ugh. Link kicked the thugs away, and took the samurai sword. "Very good. Now I have weapons and shields." Link sighed helplessly again. Captain America's shield toy in the left hand and Japanese sword in the right hand. It's too embarrassing to fight Iron Man with this equipment. I'm not a funny character. But this is a different time, and there is no other substitute. So Link flapped his wings, and flew into the sky. As soon as Link flew into the sky, he saw Iron Man covered in ice, and falling with a bang, raising a large cloud of dust. Then he saw Iron Man falling clumsily in a step-by-step manner. It seems that his energy is running out. Tony fell to the ground, and saw Link holding Captain America's shield in one hand and Japanese sword in the other. Even in danger, he laughed and said, "Link, you are amazing. Where did you get this good equipment?" Before Link could reply, there was a noise behind him. He saw Iron Man standing up almost unscathed. 2 shells were fired. Link flapped his wings and glided quickly, dragging Iron Man's heavy body to avoid it. The shells exploded behind him. A baddie shouted, "Tony, you are just like your father, a stupid genius. Look at these amazing inventions you have made. You squandered your talent and don't know how to cherish it. Today, I will bury you and this little brat with the weapons you invented." Today is the first day of recommendation. Results are needed, as this concerns the future fate of the Legend of Zelda Invades Marvel. I hope everyone can support me. Collections and votes are welcome. There is one more chapter to be updated before 12 o'clock. There are too many daily recommendation tickets and rewards, and the author can't fit them in, so I will post them in 2 chapters. Thank you for Dream Sense of Direction with 8 recommendation tickets. Thank you for 123 recommendation tickets. Thank you for Fiu Yaofeng with 1 recommendation ticket. Thank you for Sticky, sorry I can't type your name with 5 recommendation tickets. Thank you for 00 with 1 recommendation ticket. Thank you for V with 3 recommendation tickets. Thank you for with 2 recommendation tickets. Thanks for 11,399,315,643 recommendation votes. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from Shu Lianzhao. Thanks for 3 recommendation votes from Xinkang Zionero. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from Muangs. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from you. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from Kunid. Thanks for 10 recommendation votes from Jianghua. Thanks for 3 recommendation votes from Gaze. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from Minecrafter. Thanks for 5 recommendation votes from Yaogwajan. Thanks for 6 recommendation votes from Fethev and Yao. Thanks for 3 recommendation votes from Yolex. Thanks for 5 recommendation votes from Guaozachan and Anghuang Tai. Thanks for 1605151630418394 recommendation votes from Book Friends. Thanks for 6 recommendation votes from Guaozachan. Thanks for 2 recommendation votes from Wujiaxioho. Thanks for 3 recommendation votes from Handsome Attitude. Thanks for 123 recommendation votes. Chapter 23 Defeat. Link R. Shield countered again, and the bombardment bounced back to a baddie. He quickly turned around and ran to Stark Tower with Tony. This was the center of the city. If the 3 of them fought, a lot of innocent people would be killed, so Tony chose to fight in his own territory, Stark Tower. Moreover, Tony had just witnessed the power of Ironmonger, and even Link's shield attack could not defeat him. So he planned to detonate the reactor to destroy a baddie. While flying away, Tony said to Link on his shoulder, "I don't want to be killed by a baddie. That mecha is so ugly and low class. I will be very embarrassed to be killed by such a thing." Link was speechless, staring at a baddie behind him. He was trying to communicate with Darkle. Darkle's powerful strength was enough to destroy Ironmonger. After successfully communicating with the heroes of the Drum Tribe, Link clenched his fists and was about to have a big battle. At this time, the murmuring voice of the goddess Hylia sounded again in his mind. "Brave Link. Please defeat a baddie without the help of heroes and external forces. Another mission." Link immediately gave up the plan to summon Darkle. Link must complete the guidance and trials of the goddess Hylia. But the current situation is difficult for Link. Shield counter is strong when facing a strong opponent, and weak when facing a weak opponent. For a mecha like Ironmonger whose defense is much stronger than its attack, the shield counter cannot break the defense at all. Link only has a samurai sword. Using it to fight a baddie is like trying to pick up a rock with a toothpick. And the word just now mentioned external forces. Naturally, it refers to the external force that destroyed the Ironmonger with a reactor explosion in the original plot. It seems that the goddess Hylia is deliberately making things difficult for him. But Link has gotten used to it. It is precisely because of the goddess Hylia's continuous brave trials that Link has gradually transformed into a hero who seals the Demon King. He is not afraid of any challenge. When Tony rushed into Stark Hall and planned to detonate the reactor, Link stopped him. "Stop. Let me deal with him. This is the center of the city. If the reactor explodes, many people will die." Tony said anxiously, "But there is no other way. My iron suit is running out of power, and your shield counter is useless. We can't beat this iron monster at the moment. This armor is too hard." Link shook his head. "No, we are not dealing with Ironmonger, but a baddie inside." Tony curled his lips. Isn't this nonsense? But he has begun to think about Link's words. Tony only thought for a second and knew how to defeat a baddie next. Even if the armor is hard, the driver inside is still an old man. A baddie rushed over and roared, "Run. Why did you stop? Are you finally desperate?" Link jumped off Iron Man's shoulder, holding a shield and sword, and walked over step by step with a firm look in his eyes. A baddie shouted, "I don't want to kill children, but I don't care about such a hateful child." He opened fire on Link directly. Link's eyes were focused on the flames from Ironmonger's firing port, and he listened to the sound of explosions in his ears. Suddenly, the sky and the earth went dark, and time slowed down. Bullet time started. Link rushed forward, leaped up in one step, stepped on Ironmonger's knee, and hit him hard with his elbow against the round shield. Bang! Ironmonger's head was hit hard, and he was in a state of stiffness. At this time, Iron Man rushed over at high speed, and knocked Ironmonger to the ground. A baddie gritted his teeth. Damn it. Ironmonger sacrificed convenience and slenderness for sturdiness. His body was too clumsy, so it was difficult to stand up after being knocked down. This was exactly Link's plan. He had just dealt with 2 stone monsters today, turned them over, let them face up, and exploded by themselves. Ironmonger's body was as heavy as a 200-kilogram giant, with short limbs, so he was naturally afraid of falling. A baddie said hatefully, "Wait for me to stand up." Wait. He couldn't stand up with his mechanical arms, so he suddenly started the thrusters under his feet, intending to fly into the sky and then stabilize his body and stand. But Tony hurried to the position of the thrusters on the bottom of Ironmonger's feet, looked at it with his hands on his hips, and shook his head. What a pathetic structure. Just because the thrusters are on the bottom of the feet, don't you know how to install protection? A baddie, you still haven't made any progress. He suddenly released all the ammunition, and with a bang, destroyed the thrusters on Ironmonger's feet. A baddie roared, "Do you think that I can't do anything to you if you destroy my thrusters?" Ironmonger couldn't get up for the time being, but a baddie pointed the muzzle of the gun at Link standing on his chest, and fired with a bang. Boom. Link used the shield to reflect the artillery attack on Ironmonger's head. With a bang, although the armor was still intact, the dazzling light suddenly released made a baddie scream, his eyes went black, and he was temporarily blinded. Tony used the last bit of energy to fly into the sky and then dive down rapidly, using his body as a cannonball and smashing directly into Ironmonger's chin. Bang! Tony hit Ironmonger's chin, just like a ping pong ball bouncing on the table, and bounced back with a bang, rolling on the ground, probably injuring a lot of soft tissue. Although Tony's dedication to himself as a cannonball did not cause much damage, his mission was accomplished. Ironmonger's chin raised, revealing a slight gap. Link directly held the samurai sword in reverse, stabbed into the gap with one hand as a javelin, and pierced Abade's brain from the inside. Abade was silent immediately. Link jumped down panting. Tony panted, "We won." At a glance, he saw blood dripping from the gap in Ironmonger's head. The person inside was one of Tony's closest people. He was still roaring furiously like a demon king just now, but now he was quiet. Tony asked, "Is he dead?" Tony's emotions were a bit complicated. Link nodded. Tony took off his helmet, revealing a pale and tired face. He lay down dejectedly, tilted his head, and muttered, "Fortunately, I didn't kill him." Link didn't care about Tony's complicated feelings. In his mind, he remembered the voice of the goddess Hylia. Complete the trial of the hero and gain skills. Link's breathing stagnated. Mipha. Is Mipha about to wake up? Gain the bomb skill. Link's hand swishes, and two more bombs appear, one round and one square, both emitting a faint blue light. Link put them away helplessly. Bombs. What use does he have for bombs? This kind of bomb is very weak in the game. In the Marvel world, it can probably only bully ordinary people. Link is a hero. How can he bully ordinary people? It's a new day, please give me some votes. I've been counting on this job all day. Sorry, it's a little late. I haven't sent it out yet because of the word limit. I'm still organizing it. The space for the author's remarks is full again, so I'll move it to the main text. Thank you to bookfriend 150,510,154,618,650 for the 100 Kidian coins reward support. Thank you to bookfriend Shinshendeo Deo Leo Tauzi for the 500 Kidian coins reward support. Thank you to Gu Yuzachan for 6 recommendation votes. Thank you to Shizhang Wangayu for 2601 recommendation votes. Thank you to the Association Boss for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you to bookfriend 201701250333284000 for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you to Zunayan Yunian for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you to Douglas Zayanayu Yishi for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you to Yaoya Han Han for 5 recommendation votes. Thank you to Zvatsk for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you to Darkstar Dark for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Yun Mengan 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guzeline Pride 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Hold Your Hand and Grow Old With You 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Dreams Have Become Empty 7 recommendation votes. Thanks to I'm a Puppet 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Peeling Apples 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Dawn Goddess 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to RHPK 9 recommendation votes. Thanks to =_ 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Douglas Salted Fish Lone Wolf 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Old Man Who Talks About Gods 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Broken Wings For You 7 recommendation votes. Thanks to Going to the Country 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Zeukert 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Haha Estranged 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Slag 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Stifenbin 10 recommendation votes. Thanks to Summer Ed Leaves 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Cabbage Worm Rookie 2 recommendation votes. Chapter 24 Scandal. Link helped Tony, who was groaning, to take off his armor. The MK3 had been deformed by the impact just now, and Tony's body was stuck. People like Tony who don't have a strong body and can only rely on the technological shell will be crushed to death by the armor they designed if they are not careful. Link took off Tony's armor with force. Tony screamed in pain, and a piece of cloth on his arm disappeared, bleeding. Tony said, "Link, I owe you a favor again." Link looked at the glowing reactor on Tony's chest and thought, "You will owe more in the future." He planned to find a time to tell Tony about the legacy left to him by his father, the new element. At this time, a large number of SHIELD personnel came outside the building. Pepper ran over and shouted, "Tony!" She wanted to run over and hug Tony, but Tony was in armor, and it would be uncomfortable to hug a piece of iron, so she didn't do it. Zelda and Natasha also rushed over at this time. Link was not wearing any armor. Seeing that Link looked pale and seemed to be injured, Zelda rushed over and threw herself into Link's arms. Link patted Zelda's back and said, "I'm fine." Tony whistled frivolously. After a busy time, a new resident, Zelda, appeared in Tony's mansion. Tony was injured, but his brain was fine, so he still drove Damien Jarvis to develop a new generation of Iron Mansion. Pay attention to the news outside in your spare time. In a few days, he will hold a press conference to explain what happened in the riot in Stark Tower and who the flying armor is. Tony plans to make a big news. Coulson, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., is visiting Tony at his home at the moment and gave Tony a manual for answering questions from the media. Damie poured Coulson a cup of coffee that tasted rather bad. Tony sat cross-legged beside him, sinking into the sofa in a very comfortable posture, watching Link and Zelda busy in the video. This girl is a rare genius on Earth in thousands of years. I guess she is a little inferior to Da Vinci and Zelda. Tony said about Zelda with a strange look on his face. This little girlfriend of Link has been pestering me to teach me knowledge since she moved into my house. I felt annoyed at first and didn't want to pay attention to her, but for Link's sake, I perfunctorily said a few words. As a result, Zelda actually relied on my words and self-study to master the manufacturing technology of the Iron Man suit in a few days. Now she is busy making a new generation of the MK series for me. It's amazing. At the end, Tony added unwillingly, "Of course, she is still a lot worse than me. But I'm also satisfied to have an assistant who barely meets my standards." Oh, haha. Coulson smiled on the surface, but he was complaining in his heart. Tony is too narrow-minded, even wanting to compare with other girls. But after looking at Zelda's back, Coulson said in his heart, "She is not a genius on Earth." Tony suddenly approached Coulson mysteriously and said, "These two kids claim to be from Hyrule, from the land of magic and swords. I don't believe them. I suspect they are hiding a secret." Oh. Coulson was alert. Nick had instructed him to gain the trust of Tony, Link and others. Tony discovered the secret and was willing to tell him, and it was about Link and Zelda. This made Coulson a little proud. My affinity is indeed the best in the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. As a result, Tony said his guess, and Coulson almost spit out the coffee in his mouth. Tony frowned and said, "You said they are related by blood, right? Or are they siblings or something like that?" Coulson coughed violently and said hurriedly, "Why do you think so?" The light in Tony's eyes instantly traveled through time and space. At this moment, Tony seemed to be possessed by Sherlock Holmes, and Coulson was the stupid Watson who never found the blind spot. Tony spoke in a strong and powerful voice. "Look, Link and Zelda both have particularly bright blonde hair and long fairy-like ears. This means that they are very likely related by blood." Coulson, "Look, Link and Zelda, they have not told me their last names yet. How could a person not have their own last name? They must have chosen to abandon their last names. As for why they abandoned their last names, it goes without saying that Zelda and Link have the same last name. What does the last name represent? They abandoned their hometown and wandered around, speaking in a childish way, claiming that they were from a magical country. This was a lie, to cover up their forbidden love and escape reality. They may very well be siblings. Of course, I prefer to agree that they are siblings. It's reasonable for them to give up everything and elope in order to avoid family blame." Coulson, "Look, ever since Zelda moved into my house, she's been living in the same room with Link. But they haven't had any sexual relations. They look like a couple, but Link respects Zelda very much, and Zelda also has some vague concerns about Link. Why is that? Right. They are siblings. They dare not cross the line." Coulson looked horrified. "Mr. Stark, you actually peeked at two little kids." Tony hurriedly denied. "If Link knew about this misunderstanding, he might be beaten into a pig's head by the furious Link. He'll beat you up, even if he's wearing the new MK. Tony spread his hands and said, "Look at who I am. I'm the boss of a listed company. I'm a billionaire. I'm a playboy. The number of women I've seen or experienced is enough to circle the earth 3.5 times. Coulson complained in his heart. "Cut into slices? so I can tell who is pure and who is Bixth by looking at a girl's face. I will never be wrong. Zelda is a virgin, that's for sure. Carlson. Tony regretted expressing his doubts. If Carlson leaked it out, he would be beaten up by Link. Tony looked at Carlson seriously and said, Carlson, I tell you this because I trust you very much. Don't tell anyone else. Carlson smiled with a trustworthy face, of course. But he muttered in his heart, after hearing what Tony said, it does make sense. So in the future, all kinds of rumors about Zelda and Link circulated in the Avengers. The future global explosive news headlines are expected to be, Link and Tony turned against each other. Tony was beaten and had a bruised face. The other members actually watched with a smile. The Avengers are facing a split. Link and Zelda yawned at the same time, and Zelda rubbed her nose. Link looked alert. I have a bad feeling. There seems to be a conspiracy against me and Zelda. It must be because of Ganon. Ganon, huh? Carlson put it on the cup and said solemnly, this time, I want to ask Link to do us a favor. Tony had previously obtained identities for Link and Zelda, and he became the legal guardian of the two children. Tony said, you go first. They will be done soon. I can't order them. Carlson spoke with a yearning, a little unsteady, that Captain America, he is not dead. He has been frozen for decades and has awakened. Let's ask Link to comfort Captain America. They should have a common language. Tony's expression was as horrified as if he saw Carlson dancing on a pole in front of him in a bunny girl. Captain America, welcome to vote for support. I'm number 4 on the list. There is only a slight gap from the previous one. Maybe your recommendation can help me surpass him. Thank you all for your support. Thank you to book friends 150516182955957 recommendation votes. Thank you for Dream's sense of direction 8 recommendation votes. Thank you RHPK 9 recommendation votes. Thank you for being pushed to the sky. Salted Fish 2 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Godly Old Man 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Spitfire 9 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Red Flag, the West Wind 4 recommendation votes. Thank you for the Big Head 1 recommendation vote. Thank you for Breaking Your Wings 4U 7 recommendation votes. Thank you for Noah's Ark IE2 recommendation votes. Thank you to book friends 106515163041839 recommendation votes. Thank you Zao Huanua Meng 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Hang Meng World 3 recommendation votes. Thank you Good Girl MK 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Minecrafter 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to V Magnetic Levitation blog for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Zunan Union for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Yuzameng for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to 123 recommendation votes. Thanks to Guzalien Pride, 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 15,071,919,100,008 for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Gay Go Die for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Handsome Attitude for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Nightlight and Shadow for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Monster Jun for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Funeral Night Emperor for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Clown XX for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to Supreme and Ang Tae for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 201701250333284002 recommendation votes. Thanks to LGBT Leogi for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Dreams Come True for 7 recommendation votes. Chapter 25 Captain America. I'll go comfort Rogers. Link looked strange. He had just helped Zelda move things and his head was a little sweaty. Zelda wiped Link's sweat like a young wife. Although she was a princess, she didn't like to order others around. After defeating Ganon, she and Link wandered around Hyrule, bandaging Link's injuries, washing clothes, and preparing food. Link would throw everything into the pot, often creating unknown substances. Link dared to eat it, but Zelda didn't. Zelda was in charge of everything. Carlson nodded, his expression a little embarrassed, and said, "What our director means is that you and Captain America have a lot in common. You also woke up after sleeping for 100 years. I believe that in this regard, you have a lot of experience and resonance, and can help Captain America adapt to the new era. Link. Tony shook his wine glass and nodded. Yeah. Yes, you and the 1940s idol in tights do have a lot in common. For example, you both love shields. Tony wiped his forehead with his arm, with a strange look on his face. The world has really changed. Captain America has been resurrected. Could there really be gods? Link and Zelda said, yes. Zelda was referring to the goddess Hylia, and Link was talking about Thor and other northern gods. Tony. So Link went to play with Steven Rogers. Link and Coulson were at the hospital in trance. Link brought a bouquet of flowers, while Coulson was dressed up, holding a large bouquet of flowers in his hands. The suit he wore cost Coulson half a year's salary. His shoes were polished to a shine. His hair was meticulously done, covering Coulson's hairline, and his body had a faint smell of men's perfume. People who didn't know would think Coulson had just come out of his own wedding. Coulson took a deep breath. The boss is on my side and sent me to see the captain instead of someone else. I'm so lucky. I need to calm down and calm down. It was not long ago that he learned that his idol Captain America was not dead. He was so excited that he was in a trance all day, which gave Nick a headache, so he asked Coulson to come to see Rogers. Link was casual, wearing casual clothes, with a ponytail behind his head, soft hair hanging on his shoulders, and 2 long ears that were very eye-catching. This is a hospital, and the doctors passing by subconsciously thought about how Link's deformed ears were caused and how to correct them through surgery. The two had been standing in front of the hospital for a long time. Coulson said he wanted to calm down and leave a good impression in front of his idol. Link had no choice but to wait with him in the sun. When the two were about to go in, they saw a man in hospital clothes who looked like a mental patient running out barefoot, knocking past the security guards and rushing out. Link didn't need to guess. He knew it was Captain America Steven Rogers, who said to Coulson, "Your idol rushed out to see you." Coulson was stunned. Link hurried over, stood in front of Rogers, stretched out his hand, and handed him a bouquet of flowers, saying, "Congratulations on your recovery, World War II hero." Rogers was now very confused, ignoring Link, opened the bouquet, and tried to push Link away. But when Link saw Rogers' hand reaching out, he threw Rogers to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw, and pressed his back. Seeing Rogers struggling desperately in panic, Link's heart softened and he whispered, "Calm down, you have been asleep for decades, and now it is the 21st century. In this world, except for Bucky the Winter Soldier, only Link can understand Rogers' mood at this moment. When he wakes up, he will face powerful enemies, people who urgently need to be saved, and historical flaws that must be made up. The people around him have grown old and died, and the world has changed dramatically. Rogers' world is a steel forest rising from the ground, while Link's world has become a ruin, and the few remaining seeds of civilization are also very few in number." Nick asked Link to comfort Rogers, but he actually found the wrong person. Link is not good at speaking, and he tried to communicate with Ross before, but ended up fighting. Facing Rogers, who had the same experience, Link could understand, but he didn't know how to comfort him. He simply said, "Calm down." Link's voice was very gentle, but Rogers didn't listen to a word, muttering, "I'm late for a date." Link was helpless. At least Peggy Carter is not dead. And Rogers reminded Link of Mytha, and he couldn't help but feel depressed and let go of Rogers. Rogers stood up and looked at Link's face. He said, "You are very sad." Link shook his head. He didn't want to show his emotions. In front of others, he was always strong. Rogers panted and said, "You are very strong. In the 21st century, has the super soldier potion been used by everyone?" He was pressed to the ground by Link and could not break free. This was certainly because of the joint lock. Even so, he was able to control Captain America. This kind of strength was far beyond that of ordinary people. Rogers thought that the super soldier serum was popular in the new century. Otherwise, how could he be thrown over the shoulder by a child? "I couldn't help but feel confused. Decades ago, I was a hero. Now I'm just an ordinary person." Link shook his head. "No, I'm special just like you." At this time, Coulson also ran over panting, and many flowers in his hand fell. Days came over, trembling chin. Coming to Rogers, Rogers asked Link, "Who is this?" Link didn't answer yet. Carlson took off his own coat and shirt like a pervert, opened the limited edition vest of Captain America inside, and stretched the vest. Captain of the team. Sign for me, Rogers. After a commotion, Link and Carlson took Rogers to a cafe, surrounded by disguised SHIELD agents. During this time, Carlson had a dark face, thinking that he had lost face in front of his idol, regretted it and wanted to die, and decided to find an opportunity to go to the toilet to commit suicide later. And Link, the incompetent negotiator, roughly explained what happened decades ago. Because of Nick's entrustment, Link also explained his own things. Rogers has been silent since listening. Link finished what he had to say and fell silent. He didn't like to talk and often had silence. Let it be silent. Let Rogers digest it slowly. Carlson saw the silence and didn't want to speak either. The three of them drank coffee in silence. If it's too quiet, something will happen. For example, it's late now and the sky is gradually getting dark. Outside the window is a sunset glow, orange and red, blood red. There are noises of commotion outside the store, and pedestrians are looking at the sky with dull eyes. And Link feels a burning smell floating in the air. He reacted immediately. Blood moon. Pondering votes and collections. Thank you Handsome Attitude for your 100 book coins reward support. Thank you Bonheat for your 100 starting coins reward support. Thank you Zalmeng for 4 recommendation votes. Thank you Brilliant Aquarius Heart for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you Hegemon for 1 recommendation vote. Thank you Shulian Sao for 2 recommendation votes. Thank you Yuki for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to 037 as Justice for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Association Boss for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to Nicholas Salted Fish Lone Wolf I for 2 recommendation votes. Thanks to the young man who often reads novels for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bonheat for 8 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Trench for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to Cami9 for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Demonstration Swordsman for 4 recommendation votes. Thanks to the Clown XX for 1 recommendation vote. Thanks to the Decade D for 5 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 1612032207577081 recommendation votes. Thanks to I Can't Grab My Name for 6 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 150,616,192,329,463 for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to The Passing Lioran for 3 recommendation votes. Thanks to Midnight Blood Thief for 8 recommendation votes. Thanks to Bookfriend 2018070620044337 for 1 recommendation votes. Thanks to Yugo Style for 5 recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.